Out of the gates and ready to go. Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow is underway from 6th and Peabody with Yee Haw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine here on the OutKick Network. Glad you're with us. If you're streaming live, if you're listening live on this great radio partner, we say thank you. Jam-packed show today for the Wednesday edition. Mike Renner will join us from the Messenger, football analyst. Dive into the rookie quarterbacks across the NFL currently. He did a deep dive, a breakdown on that recently. He'll join us in studio. We'll go through the three and look ahead to what could be a massive quarterback class coming up in 2024. Primary complaint each and every Wednesday in the first hour. We also have Tom Glavine, Hall of Famer. Chad, one of our favorites ever growing up in the 90s with the Braves. Glavine's on the show today in hour number 2, as is our fearless leader, OutKick founder Clay Travis. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Hutton. Good to be back. 1995, Tom Glavine, Game 6, the old Atlanta Fulton County Stadium. A combined one-hit shutout of the former Cleveland Indians, now Cleveland Guardians, to win the Atlanta Braves their first World Series. One of the greatest and most clutch performances in Major League Baseball history. I was a young lad at the time, huge Braves fan, watching that game intently with my grandmother, my Nana, and I remember everything about that game, including David Justice's big home run that lifted the Braves. And there was controversy that morning with David Justice and Atlanta fans. David Justice was booed that night until he hit that home run. I'm going to ask Glavine about that coming up at 4:20 Eastern time today. Hutton and I am pumped to talk to the great Tom Glavine today. It's going to be fun.
Been a bucket list guest of ours for a while. He joins us later in today's show. Speaking of the Braves, quite the finish while you were out with doubling up on Harper and ending that game, coming down 4-0 and winning 5-4 to even the series at one game apiece. They'll have first pitch at 5:07 Eastern in Philadelphia for Game 3 of the NLDS. Quite the series, quite the start to the postseason for Major League Baseball, Chad.
Yeah, and it's such a marathon, right? We know this about the game of baseball. 162 games in the regular season. Hutton's Orioles out in 3 games. Yep. There's an injustice to that. This historically great season for the Orioles, I get it, that maybe they're not coming back from a 3-0 deficit and winning a 7-game series. But we've seen it happen before. The 2004 Boston Red Sox with Curt Schilling comes to mind about a team that came back from down 0-3. I just hate that anything that is left up to a smaller amount of games after you've played 162, I don't like it. I don't like going from 7 games to 5 with that. I like the going from 1 game to 3 for the wild card series and getting more teams in the postseason. I'm all for that. I'm not a hardliner that thinks, only 2 division winners and you have an NLCS and an ALCS and that's it. There's just something very unjust about 5 games only to decide a series, to decide a season after 162 games.
I'm all for shortening the season a bit if it includes lengthening the playoff series because they want to get all this in before the first week of November or whatever it is. Like that excuse, I just pushed to the side. They could force this to be a little bit more fast paced if they wanted to, and if they want to lengthen things out a bit for TV revenue and purposes of that, shorten the season by a week or 2.
I'm with you,
and allow the series to go 7 games if you want. And plus,
who said baseball has to start in October with the postseason? You could start the last week of September and make these 7-game series, or like you said, Hutton, fit another couple teams into the playoffs.
If you want, yeah.
If that's the way you want to go to do it. I think more playoff teams, just in general in sports. I'm not one that typically says, there's too many teams making the playoffs. NBA and NHL, a great example. More than half the league makes the playoffs, right? That's a lot, but I also think it's good for the sport if you keep more cities and fan bases interested for a longer period of time and you don't go through an entire season where it feels like you have no chance at playing in a playoff series. So that part of it I'm okay with. For baseball, though, especially, I just think 5 games in a division series. Right. You've got 4 teams left in each league. 5 games is just way too short a time and not enough games to me. It should be best of 7. That should be how you decide these games. I think it sucks. I don't like it. I don't like watching the Braves, Phillies, and feeling like the series is over, down 4-0 in Game 2 of the series. Even though the Braves did come back to win 5-4.
But it's not.
No, they've got new life now.
How about that finish, man? You and I have not talked about this because you were out. Great to have you back. It feels like I'm talking to you on the phone right now because I'm looking at a camera and I can't see anything in return, so I don't know your emotions here.
I have great periphery.
At least you have a clock to look at as well.
Peripheral, I'll spell it later. Peripheral eye glances at you, Hutton, so I kind of see you over here while also looking straight forward. So, yeah.
The finish
was amazing.
Covering the 94, 96 feet by Michael Harris Jr. Harper busting it to get back. I've watched this replay at least 20 times now. Have you seen the video that's going around of the call, every different call that was made with that play? And
I have not.
The different broadcast crews?
I've not seen that yet. So I don't want to sound too much like an elitist, but I was watching this game from a lake house.
Yeah, go ahead. With
the family, fall break. I don't own the lake house. A buddy of mine owns it. Got a nice deal on it, in case you were wondering. Great spot, by the way. Tim's Ford Lake, for those who are familiar, in Tennessee. Not only that, I had to unlock a gate just to go down my drive, not a community, just one solo drive to go to this lake house. It was so nice. But I'm surrounded by forest. I'm out on this deck it's got a roof on it, but it's wide open. Watching this game, it's probably a 48-degree night, and I'm watching this thing happen.
Riley hits the homer in the 8th.
As it is, the Riley home run, the one-armed home run to take the 5-4 lead. First off, that game was over until Travis d'Arnaud ambushed a first pitch and had a 2-run home run to make it 4-3. Then Riley's 2-run bomb to make it 5-4. Then you go into the 9th inning. When that ball was hit, I was certain it was a 2-run blast and that the Phillies had taken the lead. But instead, Money Mike, Michael Harris, great catch up against the wall. Here's the question. What in the world was Bryce Harper thinking on that play? Because you do not get that far. He was halfway between second and third. That's the only way.
Well, he took off.
The Braves doubled him up because
you're right.
You get around second base. Like you want to, in that situation, you want to hang yourself up right around second base. If he catches that, gives you time to get back, take a perfect throw, and bouncing off the wall to get you out at first. But gives you time to get back. And if it goes off the wall, you're scoring anyways when you're at second base already. I thought that was a horrible mental mistake. That's when being too aggressive can cost you. But terrific finish. And what a play by Austin Riley. Hutton reminded me a little bit of Derek Jeter. In the series against the A's, I want to say 2003 maybe, where he had the cutoff where he throws it, kind of shovel passes the ball home.
Yeah, with the glove.
Yeah, but just he's backing the play up. But Harris throws it to no one, trying to get it in quick. It goes through a cutoff man into the middle part of the infield, and it's Austin Riley coming over, scooping it like it's a short bouncing ball to hit to him at third, and guns him out at first. Matt Olson's celebrating before the ball gets there. I leapt to my feet and did a big fist pump. Something else I love about baseball postseason, games during the day, is something very old-timey about that, when you can turn on Fox on an actual network at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday and watch the Minnesota Twins versus the Houston Astros. I like weekday day baseball in the playoffs. Something very old-fashioned about it before they even played games at night. World Series would be played during the day. But I like that networks are picking up games during the middle of the day.
You want a World Series game in the middle of the day?
I would be okay with it. I understand why it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But I would be okay seeing one of them that happens like on a Wednesday afternoon.
Jed, I'm on board with the Braves. I think they're winning the series now based off what happened in Game 2.
Well, we get to ask Tom Glavine about that.
Yeah, the bats come alive as well late in that game. But the Phillies, you're right. You had reason to doubt the series based on what happened in recent series for the Braves and Phillies. But the way that game ended, and the camera shaking with how loud it was there, awesome. Fantastic.
Well, and it's a cruel reminder of the cruel nature of the sport, that a team that – I think you could use numbers and say this is the greatest offense in the history of baseball. They went how many innings without scoring a run in the postseason? Was it the 7th or the 6th when they finally scored in 15 innings?
The 6th.
They broke records for going on a streak of scoreless innings to start the postseason. A team that had not been shut out since May 12th got shut out in Game 1 of the NLDS.
Well, we mentioned the Phillies as an alpha of the weekend based on that.
Crazy.
Based on the numbers and the offense that they shut down in Game 1.
I still don't feel good about it. This was the best home field advantage in all of baseball last year at Citizens Bank Park.
Yeah.
They've got the whole Red October saying going again. I don't feel great, but they were dead had they not pulled off that miraculous finish the other night. So they're squared in the series, right back in it. But it feels like the Phillies are going to take care of business again. I hate to say that, but we can ask Tom Glavine his feelings on the series now.
Coming up in just a little over an hour. Chad, two organizations in the NFL felt dead to rights in the month of September. The Cincinnati Bengals and the Los Angeles Chargers. Don't sleep on either team now as we go into the heart of October and the pivot point of an NFL season. We've mentioned in the past, of the last 11 Super Bowl champions, only one Super Bowl champion has lost more than one game in the month of October. Just keep that in mind. Here is the Chargers coming off of a bye week. Cincinnati is about to go into one after this week's game, and they seem to be picking up steam a bit, albeit it was against Arizona, but we saw what we needed to, or at least I did, in a breakout performance for Jamar Chase this season. After demanding the football in Week 4, they give him the football in Week 5, and Joe Burrow at quarterback says he's feeling better and better. If he continues to get healthy and that roster continues to get healthy, watch out for Cincinnati after a month of dormant play based on the fact that their quarterback was immobile. Burrow, he missed a couple of throws that he just doesn't miss this past weekend. But if they, again, maintain the progress, they're the Bengals team that we thought they were. They're 2-3 right now. They're hosting Seattle this week. Then they go into the bye. They come off the bye, Chad, taking on San Francisco, and then they host the Buffalo Bills. They'll travel to San Francisco, host Buffalo after the bye in a critical matchup this week as they host Seattle. And the Seahawks are coming off their bye week right now. And again, Chase, in terms of the connection between he and Burrow, no friction here. The longest completion by air distance of Burrow's professional career was this past week. But it's not about delivering the football. It's about his mobility. And if the mobility stays on the trajectory that it is, where it's getting better, at least that's what he and his head coach say, Cincinnati's going to be okay. Meanwhile, there's the Chargers. Chad, the Chargers now, they take on Dallas on Monday Night Football. They're 2-2. They're coming off of their week off. And following Monday night, they go into a short week where they then take on Kansas City on the road in Arrowhead. This is the pivot point for L.A. You've got Brandon Staley, who's extremely aggressive as a head coach, nearly bit him again in a win over Minnesota. They get it going into the bye week. But the Chargers are another team to watch because, again, 2 wins. Both L.A. and Cincy seem to be battling right now for a wild card spot, but it could be much more than that given the circumstance of the AFC. Aaron Rodgers is hurt. Burrow has been down. And across the board, there are a lot of 2 or 3 win teams in a AFC battle that I think many predicted we would have a year ago that we never had. Now it's much more competitive this year than I think we thought it would be, given the fact that some of the quarterbacks have either been dinged or they're out for the year. Big weeks ahead in October for Cincinnati and LA to turn things around.
Hutton, I bet on Cincinnati before the season started to win the Super Bowl. Plus 1,000 were the odds at the time.
What is it now?
I wonder what I could have gotten at 1-3 after losing 27-3 to the Titans, where the odds went at that point. I've not looked. I'm sure that, they went back down a little bit or back up a little bit after the win this week. But I hope you're right on Cincinnati. Definitely not dead, either one of those teams. No doubt about it. And what is the common denominator between those two, but also the thing that puts teams over the top in the NFL? It's dominant quarterback play. And both teams have it. So neither one is dead, that's for sure.
The Cleveland Browns, they have Deshaun Watson on the injury report. Shoulder injury. No timetable of the specific return for him. But they're getting in preparation for their upcoming matchup against San Francisco. If Deshaun Watson can't go, they're going to turn to P.J. Walker, who is currently on their practice squad. He would be elevated to the active roster just like he was last week whenever they had to turn and go to Dorian Thompson-Robinson. But they're going to flip-flop. Dorian Thompson-Robinson would end up being the backup, and P.J. Walker off the practice squad for Cleveland would end up being a starter. If this is something that continues to be a trend with the shoulder issue, that trade of Joshua Dobbs to Arizona is going to come back to haunt the Browns front office and Kevin Stefanski. Stefanski, in a world of hurt here, again, they've got San Francisco at home, then they'll travel to Indianapolis, then they take on Seattle. That's a three-pack that's very difficult in October, especially if Watson, who was looking good after the win over Tennessee, can't go because of a shoulder issue that now is keeping him out, not one game, but possibly multiple games, coming off of a long weekend and coming off of a chance to actually build some momentum for a team that has a great defense and plenty of weapons offensively.
And it seems like they're wasting a great defense. That's what kills you more than anything right now with the Browns is that defense is really, really good, and your quarterback either was bad or now can't stay healthy. That's a tough spot.
Tom Glavine and Clay Travis coming up next hour. When we come back, Mike Renner will join us. More football discussion. We'll take on the three rookies across the NFL. We'll get a complete assessment of their start to their careers next.
Now, yesterday, in the wake of the Trevor Bauer bombshell outing his accuser as a disgusting liar, I made the call to end the Me Too movement. And today, I'm going to continue making that case. What was once born as a push to protect real victims has, in many cases, just like we saw with Bauer, turned into an awful manipulation tactic by immoral women to strip men of their power. And we, as a society, continue to just let it happen. Time and time again, it seems. Such also, as we have seen in the past, the cases of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who was on the brink of not being confirmed after being accused of sexual assault stemming from his college years. There was the three members of the Duke lacrosse team who were accused of raping a stripper at a party, and former Bills punter Matt Araiza, who was accused of gang rape. These are just three examples, all of which were proved to be untrue accusations. Men have been put through absolute torture. They have had massive opportunities stolen from them. Their lives, livelihoods, and reputations devastated solely because they were Me Too'd. Meaning a woman made a claim and it was accepted as a fact, even though in all of these cases, it was nothing but a lie. The believe all women era, no matter what, must end right now. Even Matt Araiza, who was still out of a job in the NFL, realizes the threat of it. Here's what he said after being released from the Bills following his untrue accusations.
It's just the climate of how things are now. Accusations bring so much hate to anyone who decides to stand by the accuser that they were kind of forced to cut me from the team.
Now, don't get me wrong. If you are a true victim, I implore you to find the courage to come forward under any and all circumstances. However, if the behavior with the accused man was consensual, let's say, if there is an ulterior motive, maybe a money grab, a play for attention, then please spare us. Don't take the legs out from under real victims who now will no doubt have become discredited because of stunts like the ones I just mentioned. Real victims should be absolutely furious. Just because a woman says something does not mean it should be assumed as fact. And to everyone out there, be careful. Save those receipts. Finally, I also see no reason to continue a movement to protect women when women don't even take the steps to protect themselves anymore. For example, self-proclaimed feminists all over the country are in favor of having biological men in their bathrooms, in their locker rooms, in their sorority houses, in their safe spaces, and even those who aren't outwardly in favor still neglect to stand up against things like this, despite the integration causing an inherent danger for all women. Look how Virginia dad Scott Smith was treated after he confronted the Loudoun County School Board in Virginia after his 15-year-old daughter was the victim of a brutal sexual assault by a transgender in a female bathroom. So, how is this dad going to be attacked when he was standing up for his underage daughter? I don't understand it. Where is the concern for this girl's safety? Isn't this a Me Too concern considering she was sexually assaulted? No, it's not. And that is the problem right here, because you can't pick and choose which girls or women get protection under this awareness campaign. And on the flip side, who can be classified as an assailant?
Sixth and Peabody, our location with EHOP Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hot Mike with Honey with our rolls on across the OutKick network. Chad, USC Notre Dame coming up this weekend.
Pretty big game. Last I checked.
Pretty big.
Storied programs, both of them.
That's right. Some big games across the NFL as well. We'll dive into all of it with Mike Renner, who joins us in studio here on Hot Mike with Honey with Row. Mike with the Messenger. Mike, always great to have you in studio, man. Hope things are well.
Doing great. Thanks for having me back here.
You were headed to Notre Dame SC.
I am. Hopefully I don't get too wet. It looks like it's going to be a soaker.
That's no good.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good way to slow down Caleb Williams, I'll say.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Maybe the only way.
How far ahead is Caleb Williams to you compared to last year's, or this rookie class currently in the NFL, last year's draft?
Man, it just in terms of certainty, it just in terms of like high end. I think he has the ability to be like a Patrick Mahomes, like a Josh Allen, that, maybe Anthony Richardson could reach that, maybe C.J. Stroud could, but I think they end up, maybe just a touch below that, even like a Bryce Young, maybe a touch below that. But Caleb Williams, what he can do physically is just, it's off the charts. I haven't seen a combination of just like the arm and the accuracy of him coming out in the draft since I started doing this. 2015 draft's my first draft of doing draft analysis, and no one really since that time has really had that the way he does.
And how far ahead is he to the rest of the quarterback crop that seems to be very deep for next year's draft?
So I love Drake May. I think he's a step above Drake May at this point, and probably the tiebreaker is the fact that he's just such a talented athlete. Like, May's a good athlete in his own right, but if you want to run, Caleb Williams 10, 15 times a game, he'd probably go for over 1,000 yards in the NFL. Like, that's how special he is as a runner. So I have them two neck and neck as like truly like tier one type of prospects that you don't get one in every single class. Mm-hmm. Then after that, I think there's a little bit of a gap. But, man, Shedeur Sanders, what he's done this year, I think Bo Nix, what he's done this year, Michael Penix, what he's done this year, like there are a ton of names in that kind of second tier behind those two at the top that if you told me they all ended up first-round picks would not be surprising to me one bit.
How do you rate a guy when so much of what they do is off schedule? I think of Kyler Murray, even in Cliff Kingsbury's offense, Mike, it felt like everything that happened was him improvising and making something happen. Every highlight I see of Caleb Williams is that way. You see the natural ability, but I feel like him and Shedeur Sanders, not a ton of what they do is perfectly on time. It's those guys at times abandoning the pocket and making something out of nothing.
Yeah, it's tough, and you go back to even like a Johnny Manziel who tried to rely on that, and then obviously once he got to the NFL, did not work out. So I think to play that style of football, you better be like Kyler Murray is, who's like, a 4.4 athlete. You better be a high-end guy who could be, athletically enough to just outrun these defensive ends. But I do think that's, I won't say somewhat underselling Caleb Williams, but he can win from the pocket. He has shown that. It's just he knows in that scheme he doesn't have to. He has one of the best offensive lines in the country in terms of pass protection. And so it's like, can I hit my guy on like a 5-yard hitch, or can I hold off and wait for that big play knowing that if a defensive end comes free, I can break the pocket and still make that big play. So I think there's some of that goes on in his decision-making, in his head week to week, that he could play on schedule if he wants to, but kind of chooses not to. So I do think there is some reeling in to be had from his game once he gets to the NFL. But I do think I've seen enough from that. Even if you kind of took that part away, he's still a high-end prospect.
Mike Renner, our guest in studio here at 6th and Peabody. He's with the Messenger, football analyst, does great work both through the draft and analyzing what's going on right now in the NFL. Just on the SC Notre Dame matchup real quick, you mentioned the rain could be a sloppy one. How much does that help the SC defense? And if Williams had a defense, what would we really be talking about with that?
I think it honestly doesn't. I think that if the rain comes, I think that favors Notre Dame because what they want to do is, establish the run, get that offensive line going. Obviously didn't get it to work this past week, but I think when it's sloppier, that kind of gives you the first mover advantage. The guy who's getting that contact first, you're sliding backwards then. So if you're wanting to run the ball, that's probably going to behoove Notre Dame in that scenario. So I'm not sure anything's saving grace for this USC defense at this point.
So, Mike, unfortunate news with Anthony Richardson, the shoulder injury against the Titans, going on IR, out at least 4 more games now. It's Minshew mania again. But what have you seen from Anthony Richardson early on in his rookie year that gives you optimism for the future, even though he's going to miss this time now moving forward?
I think just the way he moves in the pocket is what I'm so encouraged about. And it's just the fearlessness. And some of that comes with being, bigger than some of the guys rushing the passer with you. But some of that just is innate in who he is. And he did that back at Florida. And that's why he was coveted, so highly as a top 5 pick, is just that when the pockets are bearing down, when guys are all around him, he throws like he has 5 feet in each direction. He is completely unfazed when that stuff breaks down. And that's a rarity and something that you really, I think we've seen a lot of guys have been struggling to coach into him. I know Baker Mayfield especially is one that I really point to that, he had these massive pockets in Oklahoma, and once he got to the NFL, Zach Wilson, same thing, BYU, once he gets to the NFL, they kind of struggle to make those plays under pressure, and maybe not even under pressure, but just from tighter quarters that you have to make in the NFL. That's just the nature of the game. And Anthony Richardson, week after week, has shown that he's fearless in those situations.
Man, Mike Renner with us. Richardson, Mike, had this throw to Alec Pierce last week before he got hurt. That was just on the money. Dropped it in the basket. I mean, it's exactly pinpoint what you want. Accuracy, give and take there with him. It sucks if you're just a straight football fan. No dog in the fight here on who you're rooting for. It sucks to see the injury because they're getting Jonathan Taylor back. We saw what Zach Moss was doing, putting a run game behind a rookie quarterback and then allowing him to develop as the season progresses. They're stunting the growth maybe is a stretch here for Richardson, but as young as he is and the investment being made, a long-term shoulder issue is not one that's great for his situation. It's not great for anyone, but specifically the situation he's in right now.
100% because of what you mentioned, like the accuracy needs to improve. He needs reps. Like the guy needs to play some football. 1 year as a starter going back to Florida. And, for as good as he is right away, like there are still a lot of missed throws on his tape. And obviously now hampering a shoulder injury on his throwing shoulder isn't going to make things any easier when he does come back. And like you mentioned there, not having Jonathan Taylor, now getting him back and seeing what this offense could be with him because Jonathan Gannon scheming it up. They've had a lot of space for Zach Moss to work with. And Zach Moss, for as much as I like him as a running back, he ain't no Jonathan Taylor. He doesn't have that home run ability that Jonathan Taylor does on a week-to-week basis. So putting those two freaks like that in the backfield would have been awesome. Now we're going to have to wait a few weeks now to see that happen.
The average NFL fan has not seen Carolina play. Right, not until
Thankfully.
Their Thursday night. Right,
Yeah.
right.
I haven't seen Carolina play either, so I'm intentionally avoiding watching them play.
Is there? Well, fair enough.
Yeah.
In watching Bryce Young, where's the good in what you've seen, and where is he really taking his lumps?
I think he's taking his lumps in the intermediate and deeper ranges of the football field. I think he's kind of the speed of the game is a little bit faster than he's used to, and so when he's used to kind of having those wide open, throws to guys like Jamison Williams back at Alabama that he could hit in his sleep, I think he's missing defenders more than I've ever seen before, more than I ever saw at Alabama. And that's something that, you hope progresses. I think where I have liked what I've seen from him is the creation ability. He still has that kind of ability to bounce away from pressure in the pocket, keep his eyes down the football field, hit a guy maybe moving the opposite direction of where he's going. There still has that kind of off-platform arm talent where he's making throws on the money. I don't think accuracy has been any bit of an issue for him whatsoever early on. It really has been kind of a decision-making and then a supporting cast issue where they just don't have guys who can get open deep. And so you're seeing just teams squat on everything in the intermediate, underneath ranges, and it's just making the windows that much tighter for him.
That criticism of Young, I feel like you probably, at least I would think, Mike, that you could apply it to C.J. Stroud coming into the league, where he came from at Ohio State with those great receivers and guys being wide open at times. But he's been terrific early on with the Texans. Well, what has been the difference with C.J. Stroud that you've seen with his play so far as opposed to Bryce Young?
I think one's the offense. Like he's truly like getting a lot more in structure, timing, open wide receivers. And it's an offense that it's the Kyle Shanahan coaching tree. It's an offense that has a lot of in-breakers. A lot of the same routes he loved throwing to Jackson Smith and Jigba is what they're dialing up for him there down in Houston. And then it's just the confidence aspect. I think after 1 or 2 games, I think it was really that second half of the Indy game where it was he had to drop back pretty much the entire second half. They were down, and they didn't come back, but he still moved the ball easily. And I think that gave him the confidence that the handful of games since then, you've really seen him not be fearful, not be pulling stuff down, not be hesitant to pull the trigger when there may be a little bit of a tight window there. And that's rare for a young quarterback. That's such a big thing to coach into a guy. That's difficult to really know how confident he's going to be right out the gate. But man, C.J. Stroud looks like he's playing, at a veteran level here early on.
Texans look like one of the teams that just got it right in the draft. Will Anderson has also been producing well. What other organizations crushed it in 2023 back in April?
Gosh, I mean, the Philadelphia Eagles, what they got with Jalen Carter, for him to be the 9th overall pick, and he looks like the best rookie defensive tackle since Aaron Donald, and truthfully might be the best defensive tackle in the NFL, not named Aaron Donald right now. That is that's insane. Like that should not happen to a team that was in the Super Bowl last year, that already had the best defensive line in football. To add a guy like that, that truly was, still only the 9th pick of the draft, still a high pick, but that's a steal for a guy as talented as he's been.
How about the Rams, too? For the team that says F them picks, they've got some, Nakua and others that are stepping up. Also, how does A-Chain go 3rd round? He's the fastest guy at the Combine, and he goes 3rd round to Miami of all teams?
Someone actually pulled a clip of me on draft night saying, I can't believe the rest of the NFL let this happen when he got drafted to the Miami Dolphins, because it truly was like the most unreal fit of the fastest man in college football, one of the fastest running backs probably since Chris Johnson, to come into the NFL, to go to the fastest offense in the NFL that utilizes speed better than anyone else in the NFL. And my gosh, I mean, the guy was going to go for 2,000 yards if he didn't get hurt here, unfortunately, this past week. But he's just electric. And really what I love about him is he never stops going at full speed. Like, he's undersized. And what you worry about undersized guys is that they'll stop their feet, then all of a sudden they get hit and they get taken down. He doesn't stop his feet. He is going to run through a tiny hole at full speed and make you have to tackle him. And, man, not a lot of guys have been able to.
Chad, the Dolphins right now, -- passing offense and running offense.
Not bad. And certainly got a guy that's fast and can do a lot of that running. There's some guys that you've written about. They don't do a lot of running during the game, but they do a lot of blocking. Offensive tackle, Mike, looks to be stacked this upcoming year. You may see one of those top prospects this weekend at that USC Notre Dame game. Who are a few of the guys you're keeping an eye on the top of that board?
Yeah, to me, this is the best tackle class since, I guess that was 2020 when we had Andrew Thomas, Tristan Wirfs, Mekhi Becton. Like these are going to be, I would assume we see 3 top 10 picks at the offensive tackle position. One being Joe Alt, Notre Dame offensive tackle, but I don't even have him as OT1, even though I think he's going to be a top 10 pick. That's Olu Fashanu, who I have as OT1, Penn State left tackle. I think he's allowed like 1 pressure all season long. He's one of the best pass protecting tackles I've seen at the collegiate level since I started doing this 2015. And then J.C. Latham from Alabama is probably the 3rd one there. A little bit different than the other 2. He's might be the strongest O-lineman in college football right now. The guy just throws people around. So it's a tackle class.
He's 359 pounds.
He's 359 pounds.
I think he
benched over 500 twice for 2 reps. The guy, and you watch him on tape, like he bench presses DTs, man. He's throwing them left and right. It's a joy to watch him play the game of football. And if you're in need of passing game, this upcoming draft has quarterbacks, wide receivers, tackles. It'll be a fun one to watch.
How much of that is due to the players staying back for NIL purposes? If they're getting a 3rd, 4th, 5th round grade, and they're trying to improve to a 2nd round, 3rd round type salary for their rookie season?
Yeah, I think it's huge for not only the game of college football and getting better players to stay at the collegiate level, but also for the NFL. You get guys coming in the NFL more ready to play. Like, it's a win-win for everybody. And then obviously the players getting paid themselves. So I think that's a big aspect of it. I think you're going to see more, I don't want to say like top-heavy drafts. Like, you're going to see better first rounds. You're going to see fewer first-round busts in the coming years because you're going to get guys who are more seasoned, who have more experience, and kind of weed out a lot of the guys who are projects who never quite develop. So I think it's good for everyone, the whole NIL landscape.
I notice you got Bo Nix right now, currently 3rd on your big board at quarterback. What's the biggest difference between Bo Nix at Auburn and Bo Nix now at Oregon that you can see?
Man, I mean, there's a zillion differences. He looks like, if you told me it was 2 different guys, I'd believe you. He even plays the game differently. He turned from, He looked like Drew Lock back at Auburn. Now he looks like Alex Smith. The guy's like a game manager. He doesn't make mistakes with the football. He's quick with the ball, gets it out of his hands. Like, it's a far cry from the dude we saw at Auburn. And truly, like, hats off to him. He remade himself, remade his game, and now he's one of the more accurate passers in college football after being, a disaster from an accuracy perspective back at Auburn. But it's almost reminiscent of like a Jalen Hurts, where everyone kind of still remembers that first impression of the guy. Everyone remembered the Alabama Jalen Hurts, and it's like, oh, he can't pass. Well, sometimes guys improve. Sometimes guys put in the work, and when they do, you got to believe it. And after a year and a half now, Bo Nix at Auburn, I believe it.
You taking Washington or Oregon this weekend?
Man, that's tough. Washington's just so loaded. I think I have to go Washington. They have so much talent offensively, not just at the quarterback position. Michael Penix, Bo Nix, probably a wash there, but Roma Dunze, like the wide receiver for Washington, like they have just dudes on that offense that good luck stopping them, truly. Like that is one of the most explosive offenses in college football right now.
Mike Renner will be there for Notre Dame and SC. Jealous of that atmosphere you get to take in. Always great with the Messenger and your NFL analysis, Mike. Thanks for coming in studio with us, man.
For sure, fellas. Appreciate having me on.
Absolutely. Chad, your guy, Michael Penix Jr.
It's my
Continues
team
to
also.
impress.
My surprise playoff team. That wouldn't be much of a surprise now the way they've been playing.
No, but you get credit for this.
Yeah.
The August prediction.
Hey, at least one of my predictions may actually come true, Hutton. That's what I'm looking for.
The only one I remember.
That and the things that I pitched Kelly in Vegas, the only things that actually work out for me.
Primary complaint always works out for us each and every Wednesday. We are our top grievance of the week next.
I'm here at the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix, but that's not the only big race that's on people's minds. Let's go talk about it.
There's no way Biden can win again. There's just no way. Even the people that voted for him because they didn't like Trump, now at least have to see like senile, not all there. Probably won't be alive for 4 more years.
Are you a Trump guy? Or are you a DeSantis guy? Or someone else?
I don't like any of them.
Who's your dream candidate? Who would you want to run?
Myself. I think the best candidates probably are smart enough not to run.
I just hope there's somebody that's young enough to care about the country instead of their politics.
My fear is they get Gavin Newsom from California. I think it would be the new cool vote for the younger people, and that's what I don't like.
Who do you think on the Republican side would be able to take on Gavin Newsom?
Great question. As a Republican registered, I love what Trump's body of work did, but they're just out to get him and destroy him, and we won't get things done, which is crappy for me to say. I thought DeSantis was going to be the guy. Trump only has 4 years left. He cannot fix everything that just happened in 4 years. And he's going to be battling indictments and all these false stuff for the next 4 years. We won't get anything done. And it'll just be the stalemate in America. That's why I almost don't want him in. But if he is the leading candidate, that's who I'm going to vote for.
Is there any Democrat that you would vote for, consider voting for?
Absolutely not.
What about RFK Jr.?
No.
Who should our first female president be?
Michelle Obama, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Harambe 2024.
We have the 2024 presidential race coming up, and I wanted to see who you thought your favorite TV characters would vote for. Homer Simpson, like who do you think he would vote for?
Donald Trump, all the way.
Vito Corleone.
Whoa. Whoever advances the cause of the Corleone family. Yeah.
Tony Soprano. If Tony Soprano is voting in the 2024 election, who do you think he's voting for?
I'm going to go Ron DeSantis.
Okay, why do you think that?
Just seems like a Ron DeSantis kind of guy.
Is this a meatball joke that you're trying to make right now? What about Homer Simpson?
Homer would vote for Biden because he's a dope.
Who do you think Napoleon Dynamite would vote for?
That's a good question. I actually don't know.
There's a right answer here.
He's voting for himself or Pedro. There's a Viking show, I think.
Okay.
Maybe that's Hulu. I don't know.
So in the Viking show, whatever the main character is, who do you think they would vote for in 2024?
Probably a goat or a dog.
I think we have one of those in office right now. So who do you think Jon Snow would vote for in this upcoming election?
I'm going to say Donald J. Trump.
Why do you think so?
Because Game of Thrones is all about a about drama, and Trump comes with the drama, baby.
Would you vote for Trump from jail?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, probably. Because at that point, what else do you have to lose?
Okay, would you vote for Trump from a jail cell?
Yeah, baby, I will get Trump out of jail.
Would you vote for Trump in jail?
Oh, yeah.
Based as
The thing that Trump needs to remember is there's another political figure that said, I don't recall very well.
Yeah.
And that's all he's got to say.
Is there like a dream candidate, someone that you think could like save us all?
Yeah, Jesus.
Amen to that.
Our thanks to Mike Renner for joining us here in studio at 6th and Peabody with Hop Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Great football analysis at the Messenger. Hot Mike with Hutton Withrow rolls on across the OutKick Network. Chad, we finished the discussion there about Washington, Oregon. Heisman showdown. We could be seeing it right here with Penix Jr. and with Bo Nix. And here's the other thing, too. And I mentioned this yesterday. See if you agree. The winner is featured more on the national landscape of college football from the nationally televised games moving forward than the loser. Maybe prominent may not be the right way to describe it.
It is the game.
The pivot from the win for the winning quarterback, if you play well, pushes you forward towards New York and the Heisman Trust.
There's just something
which is huge
about
for the your legacy.
No doubt, but it is the biggest game of the week. Right?
Massive.
There's no doubt it is the biggest game of this college football weekend. There is just something crazy about you can take a game in the southwest part of the country, in Southern California, between two teams from that area, and it feels bigger automatically than two teams in the Pacific Northwest. I don't know what you do to make both of those teams playing each other. Now, if it's Oregon versus Ohio State,
Oregon against
it's
anyone other than the Pacific Northwest,
right,
really.
It's Pacific Northwest versus Pacific Northwest. That makes it seem lesser than what it is. And I don't really understand that other than a geographic bias across the country because these two teams are great. Both of them, Hutton, it's not your stereotypical Pac-12, all offense, weak defensive line. Both these teams get after you in pretty much every way.
Yeah.
And it's going to be great football in a great atmosphere in Seattle. You got sailgating going on before the game. But I'm trying to look at this the way I did Ohio State and Notre Dame. And I'm just not quite getting there between these two teams. And I think it's only because of the area of the country they're located.
Well, it's like the discovery of that area of the country whenever, we added that to the United States, right? Like,
yeah.
It's kind of the same feel of, well, we've heard about it, but we haven't really seen it yet. I don't think a lot of people have seen Washington. They've heard
absolutely not.
They've heard how good it is, but this is the first impression for many. And by the way, first impression for many Heisman voters as well, which sucks, will be in this matchup.
You know, the game that I watched most of Washington in was on Peacock versus Michigan State.
Right. I remember that.
So I doubt all of America's tuning into Peacock to watch Washington.
That was Chad's top 10 games of the week.
And yeah, it was. It was my first Peacock appearance in the top 10 games of the week. I think Washington's a playoff team. I said it before the season. I think Michael Penix Jr. is going to be the Heisman Trophy winner. I love that team. There's something about Pacific Northwest versus Pacific Northwest that's difficult to embrace. I'm going to try to get through it. We have 3 days left in the week. I'm going to try to push through this barrier and get excited about this game. But I feel like when people talk about this game on a national stage, it still has this air of, man, they actually play some good football up there in Timber Country. These two teams playing each other. It's going to be nice. It's really good football being played. It's too cute almost of a story. But it's the biggest game of the weekend nationally. I'm going to get fully behind it. I'm just not completely in my right headspace to be there just yet, Hud. Maybe it was the lake house I was at also.
Well,
It's
maybe,
throwing me off.
maybe. But it is college football, and it is a massive, massive matchup we will be previewing throughout the rest of the week. Chad, every week at this time, we air our top grievance. It is time for primary complaint.
It's time to air our top grievance of the week.
You can complain all you want.
My job is so unfulfilling. Don't run away from your feelings.
It's time for Hot Mike's primary complaint.
Guys, my primary complaint this week, just packaging in general, but more specific, snacks and medicine. I understand why you have the Tylenol individual packet, right? And it's very difficult to open because they don't want kids getting into all these things, I guess. At least that's my theory. You can also put a child-proof little hook on your cabinet, though, and I don't need assembly required or tools required in order to get into said cabinet like I do this packaging. Same could be said for many brands of chips, different snacks like cookies. Some things open very simply, and others just simply don't. I need to go get the scissors. I'm tired of this. There should be a universal acceptance of the fact that 2 hands is all you need to open some food that you buy at the store. That's my primary complaint.
That's a great one. I'm going to add one to the list also of packaging. Hot dog packages. Ran into this problem while grilling out at the lake house.
The pillback, right?
Well, the pillback,
but
but
you can't get your
you can't get your fingernails on it.
You can't get it started.
Then when you start to do it, it tears in the wrong direction.
Yes.
I had scissors out, and I'm cutting as close as I can to the wieners around the package, and I still can't cut. I got to gash the thing in the middle to open it up every time, and then you try to wrap it back up. You don't eat all the hot dogs. It is a disaster.
It is.
Every single time I'm thinking, I'm this close to the dog itself. Why is it not opening to where I can get into the rest of the hot dogs? And what I've done is I've cut an exact rectangle around the entire package, and I still can't get into the damn package.
And then you ruined it for future.
Everywhere.
If you're trying to save a few, you have to go get a Ziploc bag or something.
Figure this out. I mean, this cold cut sandwich process isn't this difficult. Can I Ziploc it back up? It's awful.
This isn't food related, but do you know why? You mentioned Tylenol, like why those packages are so difficult to open?
Childproof?
No, it's because of the 1982 Chicago Tylenol poisonings where somebody went into a pharmacy and tampered with all the Tylenol and put potassium cyanide in it, and 7 people ended up dying.
Well, I mean...
Let's cue the Debbie Downer music on that one.
Yep, it's coming.
That old 1982 cyanide poisoning.
Yeah. There were several copycat crimes from it as well.
My thought is if you're going to try to poison some food or something, you're going to be able to do it.
Who
do you remember?
Who poisoned trick-or-treaters back in the day that now every parent believes that's a possibility? Did this ever actually happen, or is it like an urban legend that you got to check all the packaging of everything because people might poison your children when they're passing out Halloween candy?
I remember one time when I was 8.
Davey would know. Davey would know if there was an actual
incident. It happened in the 80s.
Tell us about the Milwaukee, Wisconsin incident of 76.
There were situations where I'm trying to think of what the item was that they used, that they put in like certain candy bars. I remember my parents never would let me eat anything that was home baked.
Yeah.
Like I got a cupcake one time and they just like threw it out as soon as I brought that back. They're like, nope, you can't have that.
Yeah, anything homemade we would throw out too.
Yeah, which made me frustrated because I didn't know that rule going in, and I had the option of getting actual like wrapped candy.
And you took the you took the
I took it, and it's like I made a bad business decision.
It's not as much about a parent thinking that they're trying to poison their child as much as we don't know if it was baked properly. If there's something allergic that's in there.
Oh yeah, the ingredients.
More of that. Like, is it good? How long has this thing been out? It's kind of that whole process with it. Anyway, that's a good one, Hud. Sparked a conversation. I don't know if this is going to spark a conversation, but it's just reality. My primary complaint, having been at a lake the last couple days, wet feet. There's no cure for it. The moment that your shoe, that water permeates the shoe and gets to the sock, it's over. You're done. You're going to be irritated the rest of the day. I've got oars out, and I'm paddling my young children on the lake, and I happen to pull the oar up at the wrong time when there's still water on it. Water across both feet. Feet are cold and wet, and I've got another 45 minutes of paddling to do. and I'm thinking I'm not going to be able to feel these things. They're going to go numb. I'm going to be irritated the rest of the day. Then I'm going to get the wet socks off later. I'm going to throw those in the dryer, but my feet are going to itch because the wetness of the shoe and the sock on top of it. Wet feet, we've all had them. We all know about it. It's the worst. It's my primary complaint.
It is. Do you guys just carry an extra pair of socks in your bag?
No, not unless I'm at the lake or somewhere.
You're saying
where I'm
on
gonna
the
get my
boat
feet
or
wet.
just period? Do you have extra pair of socks in your bag right now?
I don't, but sometimes whenever I go up to the office, there's the chance that rain's gonna
Oh,
hit,
yeah.
and so I know if I'm walking back down, I've sat in the studio and just had wet socks on, and it was just a miserable show
It's
for me.
awful.
So I started just carrying an extra pair.
I thought you were going to tell me that you had a sweaty foot problem.
No,
that you have to
I
have
don't.
an extra pair of socks for.
No, it's not for that, but my primary complaint does involve sweat, Chad, and it's the armpit stains on shirts, and it's just because I can't control the temperature in certain environments, and right now is that time of year where it happens in the fall and the spring as we're going through, where some days it's going to get up to the 80s, but then it's going to drop into the low 50s at night, and so the heat versus air conditioning being on at different times. If it was up to me, the thermostat would stay at 67 degrees at all time. I know not a lot of people are going to get behind that, but that's just where I'm at. And so then it's, I did buy a new shirt the other day, and then the next thing you know, it's oh man, I've already got sweating through this one, and that's just a problem. I probably drink too much caffeine, so that's partially my problem. But at the end of the day, it's just feel weird lifting up my arms knowing that's going to be seen.
What caffeine do you drink? I've never seen you with a coffee.
Usually cut the check, but a Alani energy drink.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll do it's similar to a 5-hour, but it's something else. I usually take that. What I'll do
is it shot form or is it full drink?
The Alani's full drink. I'll usually drink that coming in, but usually before I wake up, I'll set my alarm an hour beforehand and take a shot. That way the caffeine naturally wakes my body up, so I'm not as miserable when the alarm ends up going off an hour later.
Do you guys remember when Jesse Spano on Saved by the Bell got hooked on caffeine pills? And there was a whole episode that's ridiculous, but it's got the I'm so excited.
I'm so
excited.
Memory of this,
It's a famous meme now of Jesse crying, singing I'm so excited. And the whole plot line was that she was addicted to caffeine pills.
It is a drug.
Do those still exist? I feel like gas stations may still have them behind the counter.
Those rhinoceros
where
pills?
you can buy caffeine pills?
Rhino pills?
I've never had a caffeine pill.
They banned the gas station pills from Major League Baseball clubhouses
That's right.
4 years ago.
Like greenies back in the day, like Mickey Mantle abused.
Put another asterisk up.
Those yellow jackets and the
Yellow Jackets,
yellow
yes.
jackets and rhinoceros pills.
Hud, remember we once did the smelling salts?
Yes.
On air. I want to do a show on caffeine pills and just see the effects of them. I want to find out what was cool.
We can only assume that's all it is on those pills.
I want to know what Jessie Spano was really experiencing and how she got hooked on them. So I've never taken a caffeine pill. They sell them over the counter at gas stations, so I assume they're fine. Everything at a gas station's okay.
Davey, I can hear he'll redo the scene, and Chad will be crying, but singing the song that's the nightmare. What does
she
the
says?
kids?
I'm so excited.
No, but what's the
I'm
kids?
so excited. I'm so
Your torture music?
Scared.
The
That's
torture
what she
music
ends
from the truck from last week. That's what you'll be crying and singing.
The Baby Yoda song
that's
where
it.
he says, "Mando, Mando, where my chicky nuggies gone?"
Were you subjected to
Ask
that on
question
multiple
over and over
occasions this
again.
weekend?
No, but it did pop in my head a couple times, and now I've got my oldest daughter. We just watched Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. And we were quoting that the whole time. And she was jumping off a dock, and she was doing the dun-da-dun-da, dun-da-da. So now we've got that stuck in our head. Where the Indiana Jones theme
This is so much better for you, though.
Oh, so much better. By the way, Indiana Jones Temple of Doom still holds up. Still great. Some parts a little cheesier now than you maybe remember. Last Crusade, absolutely. I watched that recently with my 8-year-old, and I'm thinking, this movie is damn near perfect. For just an adventure movie start to finish, every part of it is almost perfect.
Last Crusade's definitely number one in my book.
It's
followed
number
by
one in my
Raiders of the
book,
Lost
too.
Ark.
You don't like Temple of Doom?
I'm not a fan of it.
It's I read this about the movie. Apparently, Steven Spielberg and George Lucas were going through a divorce at the time and losing custody of their children. So they said the movie was darker because they were confronting the idea of not being around their kids. Hence the storyline where the children were stolen from the Indian village in the movie. That was a big part of that when they were writing it.
Is that what ruins the movie for you, Davey? Is the plot with the children?
No, it's just
He hates Short Round. That's why.
Short Round's awesome. Okie dokie, Dr. Jones, hold on to your potatoes.
No time for love.
Data also from the Goonies, same kid. And then what's that film, Chad, you always talked about watching recently, won a lot of Academy Awards?
Which one?
Won a lot of Academy Awards.
It's the same guy. I can't remember his name.
George Lucas? Steven?
No. The kid who played Short Round.
Everything, Something, All at Once.
Yeah, that.
Everything,
He's
Everywhere,
also
All
in
at
that.
Once. Yeah. He won the Best Supporting Actor, right?
That's what it was.
Yeah. I love his performance in Temple of Doom. That Short Round. One of the best
so much
kids
better that you get to sing
in
that
any
song.
movie ever. Like the kid performer with adults, he was one of the best of all time in cinema history.
Coming up, the latest NFL injury news of note, plus on the bus, off the bus.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey.
Welcome into OutKick, the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
There's no doubt in my mind he could have caught the ball in his back pocket if he'd been running. Blowing a lead and losing a game is 100 times more lasting and painful in some clubhouses than losing the game 15-0. If I had to start a list in the last 10 years of horrible underachievers, he's at the top.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. The taste of the Southern legend.
Just like that, the second hour is here. Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick Network. Glad you're with us. 6th and Peabody, our location with EHOP Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Coming up in 20 minutes, Clay Travis will join us. And originally going to join us in hour 2, but now in hour 3, Tom Glavine, as the Braves and Phillies will be underway, I believe.
Yeah.
Going into
they
game
will,
3 for them.
First pitch an hour and 7 minutes from now, 5:07 Eastern time.
Chad, we got plenty to discuss over the next couple of hours. Kansas is being docked a Final Four banner, from what I understand. I'm looking up the story now that just came down. You and I think, agree on this. The whole we're taking down the banners like we saw at Louisville with Patino. It's like, whatever. The season's happened. You can vacate wins all you want to. The moments that took place, the victories and the losses for other teams that they faced, those happened. And the slap on the wrist years later is an afterthought where you look back and here we are in 2023, about to begin the college basketball season around the corner. And I think for the most part, we look back at 2018 and think, well, that happened. It's a 24-hour news cycle and you move on.
Yeah. The only way to really get at these programs, though, is the way that I don't think anyone in their right mind thinks should happen, and that's to penalize them moving forward. I mean, if you really want to attack someone for wrongdoings in the past, you say 3 years you can't go to the NCAA tournament. If you're Kansas, whatever it is, and that doesn't serve anything because it's not fair to the players that are there at that time, right? In some cases, different coaches that are there. The other way to really get to them is just suspend a coach for a season. That was a part of it if they're still there.
And no punishment for Bill Self in
Yeah.
this with the D'Souza ineligible. They went 15-5, I believe, with him.
I think this is just such like not even a half measure, a quarter measure of doing something that if you're really that mad at Kansas, then suspend Bill Self for a bunch of games. Again, if you really want to affect someone, you say you can't go to the tournament this year or next year, whatever. I don't agree with that, though, because the players here now
I agree.
have nothing to do with that, and why punish someone who wasn't there when the problems took place?
And the vacation of wins, and Davey's got some further details of this, they take away wins, and that puts them just below Kentucky now for all-time wins, which is also
that's interesting.
So, yeah,
that's the real punishment, I guess.
Before today, Kansas had 2,385 wins. With them losing those 15, they're now 7 behind Kentucky, who Kentucky now number 1 with 2,377 all-time wins.
Has Kentucky ever had to vacate anything? I know they haven't under Calipari.
So.
Joe B. Hall got into trouble. Rick Pitino, when he took over, inherited a mess.
Did Billy Gillespie get in trouble for something?
Yes, but I don't know that. But he didn't win enough games to matter in terms of vacation. But I don't think that they vacated anything when those things happened. I need to go back and look. But when I heard that, I'm thinking, oh, surely Kentucky's had to vacate some games in their past. Apparently not.
Well, they are once
Congratulations,
again
Wildcat
the NCAA's all-time winningest program.
Congratulations,
Kentucky Wildcats.
Kentucky Wildcat fans everywhere. Hey, this just coming down from Variety. Just quickly, we can discuss later. Jada Pinkett Smith has spoken about Will Smith and about Chris Rock and the slap. Says that Chris
on
Rock,
October 11th, 2023?
2 years later, Chris Rock came down to the end of the stage afterward and apologized to her, saying he didn't mean any harm by it. And she said, we can't talk about this right now. We're not going to discuss it. She also reveals in this interview that Chris Rock asked her out on a date when he thought that her and Will Smith were separated.
Oh.
When the rumors were out there about that she says he called her up and said, I'd like to take you out. And she said, what do you mean? And he said, you guys are getting a divorce, right? And apparently they were not. So she reveals that as well. It's
was
a
this
very,
before or
I
after
was
the slap?
skimming this interview.
Before the slap?
This was before the slap.
Okay.
And before the joke. So in 2016, this was during the Oscars So White controversy.
Yeah.
Jada Pinkett Smith boycotted the Oscars, and Chris Rock was the host that year and made a joke about, the Oscars have boycotted her work for years, and it doesn't really matter if Jada Pinkett Smith, something along those lines, and she took offense to that. So she thinks this was all brewing from that, him getting denied when he asked her out, and then the follow-up joke about her that led to Will Smith slapping him. I love this drama.
We were talking about Steven Spielberg works earlier. Spielberg set to be an executive producer, and Chris Rock will be directing a biopic about Martin Luther King Jr. We all know who will not be playing Martin Luther King Jr.
I'd say that's one biopic that Will Smith will not be involved in, for sure. Did a great job as Muhammad Ali, though, so he did get that opportunity and crushed it.
Chad, A-Chain's been placed on injured reserve.
It's not good.
No, it sucks. He was averaging 12 yards per carry, over 12 yards per carry through the season, on the season so far, not just in a game, which is nuts. So he's out for at least the next 4. Miami plays the Panthers at home. Eagles on the road, Patriots at home, Chiefs on the road in those games. They have a bye week after the Chiefs, so it'll be week 11. That'll be the earliest possible return date for the rookie standout, which not only sucks for the, just the football fans in general that want to see him play. Crazy again. We talked about this with Mike Renner earlier in the show. 3rd-round pick, fastest guy at the combine. Crazy, though, because and it sucks because of the rookie numbers and the path he's on for potential offensive rookie of the year.
Well, he was on my fantasy team, still is.
Well, there you go, too.
But he's got problems. I'm 1-4 now in fantasy football, hunting in our Old Smoky League.
7 touchdowns in 3 games for Chad with A-Chain on the roster.
Oh, let me tell you about this past week. So I go into the final 9. I'm down 11 points.
Okay.
And I've got Jordan Love and Devontae Adams going. I scored 10.8 points between the two of them. I turn on the game on the Manning cast to watch Peyton and Eli joke about, hey, you've got Devontae Adams on your team. You might want to target him a couple times. Maybe a chance to throw him the ball a little bit. I was certain that I had won with those two guys yet to play. And nope, Jordan Love, pathetic.
3
Devontae
picks.
Adams, not many opportunities all in that game, and I lose.
Chad, do we all lose if Jerry Seinfeld really wants to get a reunion together of Seinfeld and address the ending of the show that has sparked so much debate? Isn't it too little too late?
I want to know the nature of the reunion. I don't care about when they had this whole hoopla about the cast of Friends was going to have a reunion. If you're going to bring the show back, okay, you've got my attention. Frasier's coming back, for God's sakes. You can bring anything back nowadays. If they're going to get together and talk on a stage, don't care. If you actually want to have another season of Seinfeld, I'm interested. I think it's a huge mistake to bring back Seinfeld. It's nearly perfect as it was. I don't have a big objection to the ending of the show. It's sort of fitting for what the show was, a show about nothing. But I'm tired of hyping up things that turn into, a big emotional reunion where you get on stage and tell stories with each other. I don't care about that. If you're going to bring the show back, let's discuss it. But that's all I'm interested in.
He's teasing this with Boston Globe Media and NBC 10 Boston put this out. I have a little secret for you about the ending. Here's what I'll tell you, but I can't tell anybody. Again, he's kind of trolling here. Something's going to happen that has to do with that ending. Hasn't happened yet. And just what you're thinking about, Larry and I have also been thinking about it, so you'll see. That was his mention of the reunion and the fixing the ending. But, the ending happened. It's like, Chad, two opposite ends here of fandom, because Seinfeld is loved and beloved and quoted all the time. But Game of Thrones, you ran out of the books, so they wrote their own ending. I don't care to know about the book's ending now.
Yeah.
What happened.
Can I give you my guess on what I think might happen?
Go ahead.
There's one season left of Curb Your Enthusiasm that Larry David created. About 4 seasons ago, this is like 8 years ago, they do a season every 2 or 3 years. One of them, this is probably longer than that, maybe 8, 9, 10 years ago, they had a season of the show that was based around a Seinfeld reunion. And they brought every cast member. It was a real-life thing, though. It's all behind the scenes. They had table reads and everything else where Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Jason Alexander, Michael Richards, everyone was in a season, Jerry Seinfeld, of Curb Your Enthusiasm, and they were hinting at a possible reunion season, but it never happened over the course of that season of Curb Your Enthusiasm. They could rewrite the ending of Seinfeld in the final season of Curb Your Enthusiasm and make that an episode of the show. That would just be a part of Curb Your Enthusiasm. That's a pretty clever,
a bad idea.
It's a pretty clever way to do it, right? That you're joking about how everyone hates it, and then it's all making fun of it on the show, but the show within the show, you could actually do an episode of Seinfeld or talk about a new ending for it. I'm kind of on board for that.
If I would be on board if we wanted to put out odds for this. Maybe PointsBet has that.
Maybe.
You've convinced me, Chad. If you haven't taken your shot with PointsBet, now's the perfect moment. The big reason why. Exclusively for first-time PointsBet users, you can grab this unique offer right now. PointsBet users get up to $1,000 in second chance bets. If your first bet doesn't go as planned, PointsBet has your back with a second chance. You can get this offer by visiting OutKick.com/bet. OutKick.com/bet. Complete the registration process with PointsBet. Make your first bet. If your first bet happens to lose, that's when your second chance bets come into play. Remember, terms and conditions apply. You got to be 21 or older in legal gambling states. Gambling problem, 1-800-GAMBLER. OutKick.com/bet is where you can go to check out these great offers. Time for On the Bus, Off the Bus with Davey Hudson. Davey's got his sunglasses on as well.
We got to drive the bus. That's how this works, guys. We got some MLB, we got some NFL, and we got some college football today. But to get us started, we're going to Philadelphia. And Chad, I know you've got a big interest in this one. But if the Phillies win tonight, they will win the series.
Yes, absolutely. If they win tonight, they will win the series.
If the Braves win tonight, they win the series.
Yeah, this is the all so pivotal Game 3, as they say in every series in sports throughout time, and it's one of the most played out, tired expressions, but it holds true, especially in this series. I think if the Phillies get within one game of locking it up, I think a win this game late this afternoon, I think the Phillies win it. I'm kind of with Hutton, though. I think this is it. Aaron Nola versus Bryce Elder for the Braves.
Yep.
Could very well decide this series in this Game 3.
And the reason I say that, Davey, Chad, is because if the Braves win this, that means the Bats woke up in that 8th inning, or 6th and 8th inning of Game 2, and they go on to win Game 3. And I think that's just Atlanta's pace at that point.
Yes, Zach Wheeler's a big problem for the Braves. They finally got to him late in Game 2. Aaron Nola, he's very good. The Braves can hit him better than Wheeler. I think the Braves score runs in this game, which has been a big problem, shockingly, for them through the first 2 games. It's going to be tough, though. That's a tough place to win.
Phillies money line -120. If you want to take the Braves, you can get them at +105. But heading on, we're going down to Cincinnati and the Bengals. They have life. Will the Bengals make the playoffs?
Chad, I think they do. I think this is your 7th seed, though, Cincinnati, because I think it's going to be a very up and down season for Burrow with the calf. He's playing through it, and at times plays very well, delivering the football to Chase and others. But here's the main issue with why I think they're barely going to get in. They play a gauntlet of a schedule. We mentioned they've got the Seahawks this week. They go to their bye week, and then they visit the 49ers, then they host the Bills. But even after that, they still have divisional matchups, which are going to be very difficult with the Ravens and Steelers. And they still play the Vikings, the Colts, and they have the Chiefs in the second to last week of the season on New Year's Eve. It is a brutal gauntlet, and a lot of those games are on the road. That's why I think they're barely going to make it in, but they do it because of the quarterback play.
I don't think they're getting in. I think the AFC is just too brutal. The 1-3 start is going to doom them. It was encouraging this past Sunday with Joe Burrow, who, Hutton, after that game here in Nashville, we thought, this guy's not right.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's going to get right anytime soon.
Then he went off the injury report.
Yeah, then suddenly, again, it was like Mr. Miyagi's miracle cure got to his calf, and he was totally fine. So I'm encouraged by that. Again, a team I placed a bet on before the season to win the Super Bowl. But if I had to guess right now, I think they're going to be just slightly on the outside looking in.
All right, guys, traveling all the way across the country, we're going to Seattle, Washington, and huge game for Pac-12 implications, but the winner of Oregon versus Washington State will win the Pac-12.
Absolutely. And here's why. USC doesn't have a defense. And Caleb Williams is awesome, and I've seen so many Caleb Williams highlights at this point, but they're getting beat in the third quarter by Arizona on Saturday. That they can't stop them at times.
You're right.
They're not going to stop Washington and Oregon. And while I don't think Washington and Oregon have great defenses, they've got a defense. And that's something that Alex Grinch at USC has not had while he's been leading the defense. I think this is the Pac-12 championship game we're witnessing this Saturday, Hut.
Washington's got a tough schedule coming up. It has started, but they've got Oregon this week, of course. Davey, we're talking regular season? Yes. Are we talking Pac-12 championship game? I think the loser of this game, because I think it's going to be a phenomenal matchup. think the loser flips the script and potentially beats the winner. That's the path for the Pac-12 to get 2 teams into the college football playoff. If the winner of Saturday's game runs the table in the regular season but loses to either Washington or Oregon, whoever ends up losing this game, and that team also has 1 loss.
It's an excellent point. Going to be a great top 10 matchup out west. And as we travel down the coast, back to the NFL, but Christian McCaffrey, he's going to win the Offensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, I think he is. I mean, he's the identity of San Francisco. The 49ers have so many different versatile options, but he's the consistent force that puts up numbers, touchdowns, yards, and it's not going to be Brock Purdy. It's going to end up being Christian McCaffrey. And keep in mind why it's a good question, because of Offensive Player of the Year. It's not MVP. MVP will be a quarterback, and then Offensive Player of the Year will go to a skilled position, and it's going to be Christian McCaffrey.
I want to go with the Dolphin with this answer, maybe Tyreek Hill, but they spread the wealth so well there. I don't think that's going to be it. I'm going to go yes also. I'm on the bus. Christian McCaffrey is going to be Offensive Player of the Year this year, and Hutton's right. Unfortunately, you can't even consider a non-quarterback being MVP, it feels like, year after year.
Yep.
That's going to be the case again this year.
Okay, guys, quickly, staying in the NFC West, the LA Rams are a playoff contender as we hit the end of the line in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I think they are.
Contender,
absolutely.
Right now at 2-3, also at 2-3, Green Bay, New Orleans. And then ahead of them, some teams that are going to beat up on each other. Yeah, LA's in. The problem is they have to play Seattle and San Francisco again. Playoff contender, yes. Playoff team, probably not. Clay Travis next.
The idea that we believe all women is total nonsense. As I told you, my sister, a 25-year prosecutor, made that very clear to not only me, but it's certainly her son, my son, and my nephew Pete. They're all the same age, these boys. But she also warned him of women like this cretin here, this gold diggings clown that decided, I'm going to get my hooks into a big league ball player. I mean, look, big league ball players are dumb sometimes, but everybody's dumb sometimes. And Trevor Bauer, a guy named John Heyman, wrote an article which was titled, Bauer has lost his career, and deservedly so. You'll never hear John Heyman, who by all accounts is a famous baseball writer, apologize. You will never hear any of these fools apologize, because our print media is the worst. Now, we're lucky here at OutKick that we have great people. But the national print media, the dudes that are out there, the Greg Doyles of the world, the John Heymans of the world, the Dana Bembaus of the world, this Molly Knight, who reported that this woman had a fractured skull. That's right. This idiot Molly Knight works for The Atlantic, and she got fired, I guess, I don't know. Molly Knight is her name, not Wright, Knight. She, honest to God, wrote that this girl got her skull fractured. I looked up Molly Knight. Molly Knight is now basically unemployed, and of course, her Twitter is protected. Of course it is. This lady, Molly Knight, is a ridiculous fraud for printing that. It's all in The Athletic. It's in the affidavit. This woman, of course, went cowardly like all writers do when they're wrong. Ain't nothing wrong with John Heyman or Molly Knight coming out and saying, hey, what can I tell you? I got it wrong. But they can't do it. They can't do it because they're little posses that get a little bit of power, and they don't know how to handle it. John Heyman is a little scrawny guy like Doyle that got a little bit of suck as they've gotten older, a little bit. And like politicians, they don't know how to handle it. They're the worst of the absolute worst. I got a guy from Iowa telling me, no, there's some really good writers. Yeah, Armando is. Yeah, the guys that write here are. But we're not bound by the same stupidity of USA Today. We're not governed. You can write freely here, and you can write the truth without fear of retribution as long as it's the truth. Can't do that in mainstream media, or they won't do that in mainstream media. There's got to be a bias. There's got to be an angle. There's got to be a push. If you're a woman, there's got to be a push. If you're black, got to be a push. If you're white, got to be a push. Got to be some kind of bias. I learned the other day, this was pretty funny. I know that if you do not agree with the liberal side, you will be called a name. I got a family member that calls me far right. I'm like, really? I don't even know what that means, but I get it. You're a liberal, so I'm far right. You got to call me a name. The world is insane. Good for Trevor Bauer. Cubs, sign Trevor Bauer. I'll wear a damn Trevor Bauer jersey. And you can kiss my backside on any of them. Any of them.
Hall of Famer Tom Glavine. He will be with us in an hour. Hot Mike with Hunter Withrow rolls on across the OutKick
I thought
network.
you were about to say Hall of Famer Clay Travis.
Well,
and I was thinking, Clay's in a Hall of Fame somewhere?
I'm sure somewhere.
I bet he is.
If not, he will be soon.
May not be with his alma mater based on the tweet that I'm reading right now.
okay.
I don't think he's going to be inducted in the George Washington University Hall of Fame anytime soon. Clay's got to be in a Hall of Fame somewhere, though.
Let's ask him.
I'm sure MLK may have honored him in some way.
Clay, welcome. Are you a Hall of Famer?
Not that I know of. I mean, I think I probably would meet the criteria lots of places, but so far as I know, I'm not. I've not attended any Hall of Fame induction ceremonies.
Has your high school honored you in any way?
No,
that surprises
not that
me.
I'm aware of.
That surprises me.
To be fair, I mean, I was a commencement speaker. I guess that kind of would count as potential being honored, but I haven't. I don't know that we have a Hall of Fame, to be honest. I guess I could endow one and make myself the first inductee, which would probably be a heck of a move by me now that I think of it.
Travis Gymnasium.
But I don't think there is one.
The Clay Travis Hall of Fame. Not only is he a Hall of Famer, but he's got the naming rights of a Hall of Fame. Would be great.
Yeah, and I'm the inaugural inductee. That would be a heck of a move.
Clay, last time we were in College Station, it was an epic finish, and same goes for this past weekend. You were there once again. Bama escapes with the win, however. They get the victory over the Aggies, the Texas A&M Aggies. What did you make of the weekend? And now, all of a sudden, here we are the second week of October, and Georgia and Alabama seem to be slated for Atlanta.
Well, I mean, I thought that Alabama would lose an ugly game to Texas A&M, and instead they won an ugly game against Texas A&M. That's kind of what stood out to me more than anything else associated with it. And by the way, I'm at the airport if people can't hear, getting ready to fly back from New York. But I think Alabama is probably around the 10th or 12th best team in America this year. I don't think they're particularly good. But that may be good enough to certainly go to Atlanta this year. And unless LSU can run the table, obviously there's nobody else really you can point to, because I don't think Alabama's going to lose two games. Off the top of my head, I think they have 5 SEC games left: Kentucky, Arkansas, Tennessee, LSU, and one other team
Auburn.
that is not much of a threat, Auburn. Yeah. I know it's a rivalry game, but Auburn doesn't have much offensive weaponry right now. So I don't think they're going to lose 2. And I don't think LSU is going to run the table the rest of the way. And if I'm correct in that, then Alabama's probably going to represent the West in Atlanta.
And in the East, Clay, I don't see Georgia losing a game with the schedule they have left. They figure it out against Kentucky. They blow them out 51-13. And every year it feels like around this time, early October, there's a lot of big pieces written about Kentucky and their football excellence, and it all falls apart during this month when the game starts to get harder. And now you got Mark Stoops on his coach's show saying, oh, you want to beat Georgia? Pony up more dollars because they're paying for players better than ours, and I can't compete if you're not donating to NIL causes. What'd you make of what Mark Stoops had to say?
Well, so I think it's really funny because if you're on Kentucky's team now, you're like, thank coach,
Basically we think we need to be replaced by players that deserve to be paid better and are better than us. So I don't think that probably plays very well, I wouldn't imagine, in the locker room. But yeah, I think, look, there are certain teams that I think schedule well, and Kentucky seems to have done a good job of scheduling. Now, to be fair, they beat Florida. But if I'm correct, Kentucky has the left. I mean, I know they play Missouri this weekend. They've got Tennessee. They've got Alabama. They've got Louisville. And they've got South Carolina. Now, that's just 5 teams off the top of my head that I believe they all still have left. And it wouldn't shock me if they lost all 5 games. So I think Kentucky is closer to a 6-6 team than they are a 12-0 team. And I suspect that will reveal itself over the next 7 weeks or so.
Clay, A&M is 1-8 in their last 9 road games. This weekend, they're in Knoxville to take on Tennessee. Does the winner of this game get to 9 wins? Does the loser potentially only have 7?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's a huge game for both Tennessee and Texas A&M because A&M still has Ole Miss and LSU both on the road, I believe. At a minimum, those are tough games. And Tennessee obviously still has at Kentucky, at Mizzou, Georgia and Knoxville. And that those are not easy games and then at Alabama, those are not easy games to break down. So I think if Tennessee wins, they have a decent chance of going 9-3. I think if they lose, they're probably a 7-5 team. That's the way that I would kind of swing it. And I think very much the same thing could be true of A&M as to whether or not they can get to 8-4, for instance, or whether they're 7-5 and Jimbo's under a tremendous amount of stress and pressure.
Clay, you're a Braves guy like me. First off, how about the ending of Game 2 the other night, which was fantastic?
Yeah, it was fabulous.
Doesn't it also, though, feel like 5 games not enough when you get to the NLDS after you've played 162 games in the regular season? This just feels too short for me.
Well, I mean, it makes it every game, tenor hooks, right? And that was an incredible way that game ended. And I'm about to hop a flight midway through Atlanta. So I'll be watching the Braves game on this flight from New York. And, I think it is true. And I think I looked at the data. The higher-seeded team has won 54% of the time in Major League Baseball playoffs, basically, since they've expanded. So it's essentially a coin flip. And that's why there's a big article about how the Major League Baseball postseason is a crapshoot. And over 162 games, the best team can win. But over a 3-game series or a 5-game series in particular, lots of craziness can happen. And all you have to do to think about that is during the course of 162 games, how often does it happen that a team might lose 3 games in a row or over a 5-game series, 5-game stretch, go 2-3 almost all the time, right? And so I think the lesser team is favored by the shorter series. And I think that's why sometimes and oftentimes you get such a chaotic result, not to mention you can slot your best pitchers, which often means that there's not as much of a difference as there would be over a 7-game series where you get further into the depth of the pitching staffs.
Clay Travis with us on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network. Crazy is just one way to describe what's going on in New England. Since Brady has left, we see the bottoming out and the fact that we've seen a combined score of 72-3 the last 2 weeks for the Patriots. Reports now that The Athletic has said, Clay, that not only could Belichick be out after the year, he might not even get to choose his own exit plan and that Robert Kraft may fire him. How crazy is that considering the Patriot way and what Belichick has meant as much as what Brady has meant and then what we've seen since he's left?
Well, it's funny because we spent years arguing was Brady or Belichick more responsible for the overall New England Patriot dynasty. And then in the space of like 4 years, I mean, I'm talking about we spent like 15 years as that was one of the great debates in sports.
Yeah.
And in the space of about 4 years, everybody now has decided, it was Brady. and I think there's a lot of truth to the fact that Belichick, like most coaches in the NFL, despite how much praise we gave him, is a 500 coach if he doesn't have one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time as his signal caller. And if I had been advising Belichick, I mean, I'm sure he's made some money, but if he had decided to ride off into the sunset when Brady left, I think there would still be a lot of argument about him as the potentially greatest coach of all time. Instead, you're going to look at the before Brady and the after Brady, And there's only one real conclusion that we're left with, which is Brady was the aberration, the addition that made Bill Belichick one of the greatest coaches of all time. And when he didn't have one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, he was a lot more like the rest of the NFL coaches than he was different.
Clay, we have some new info as of today on Will Smith versus Chris Rock and the Oscar slap heard around the world. I want to present to you now.
Crazy timing.
And I don't know if you've seen this or not, but Jada Pinkett Smith did an interview with Variety and claims that Chris Rock, before the slap happened, when reports were out there that she was getting divorced from Will Smith or they lived separate lives, Chris Rock asked her out, called and asked her out on a date. And that this could be some of the problems that Will Smith had at the time when he slapped Chris Rock for making fun of her at the Oscars. Does this change your opinion at all of what went down?
No, because, I mean, I watched Chris Rock's comedy special, and I think what he said was, you know, is basically displaced outrage. I'm paraphrasing. I think that was the phrase that he used.
Yeah.
I don't really think that Will Smith's anger about what was said had anything to do with Chris Rock. It had to do with all of the buildup of that, and Will Smith just snapped. And so I never really felt like it was, I mean, I think it's not a coincidence that he snapped on Chris Rock. Like, do I think he would have walked up and slapped Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson if he'd made the same joke? No.
Nope.
And so I've always thought that, you know, it reflected poorly on Will Smith from the moment it happened. But I also didn't think that was, oh, I've got to react this way because this was such an offensive, outrageous thing that was said. I thought it was like, you know, the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back.
Well, it also started, by the way, because of a really funny joke Chris Rock had in 2016. This was during I don't know if you remember this, Clay, but the Oscars So White controversy, where a lot of people boycotted the Oscars. Well, he hosted that year and made a joke about Jada Pinkett Smith boycotting the Oscars, basically saying, yeah, no one asked for this. You're never going to be considered for an Oscar anyway. So that's not a big deal. And that all the outrage started at that point. So it really all goes back to comedians making jokes about people and the people that are offended by the jokes not taking it the way in which it was intended.
Yeah, look, I'm pro-comedy, and I can't believe we have to be in this position, even sometimes if people want to make me the butt of their jokes.
You're pro-comedy and anti-cancer, right, Clay? You're very consistent with that.
Yeah, anti-grandma's dying. No one hates grandma's dying more than me. Proud of that, Stan. But look, I mean, the world that we've created where words are considered violence, where silence is considered violence, I think all you have to do is look at what happened on Saturday in Israel to see that violence is violence, and that words themselves aren't. We should laugh, have better senses of humor across the board, and that's why, you know, I can't believe, you know, you have to be in favor of jokes, but I am pro jokes. I mean, I come back to, and I wrote about this in my book, when they had the protest Netflix did about the jokes that Dave Chappelle was making. I thought it was fabulous that there were other people who showed up and they had a counter protest. And they just walked around with signs that said, "We like jokes. Jokes are funny." And the people who were protesting, who were trans, grabbed their signs, broke them, and demanded that they be escorted out of the protest. So, you know, my position in general, and I could be wrong on this, is that most terrorists don't have great senses of humor. I don't think that, you know, if you were sitting around in a cave in Tora Bora back in the day with the jihadists, I don't think you were just like rolling on the ground laughing every night, you know, as you sat around the fire and chilled and thought about how to kill people. Maybe they're really hysterical terrorists, but in general, absolutism is the enemy of humor because humor requires nuance and absolutism requires no embrace of nuance at all. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's tons of hysterical, you know, suicide bombers. But in my experience, I would suggest that that's low, and that a good sense of humor is actually indicative of an ability to understand nuance, complexity. Art itself, to be frank, is rooted in nuance because without nuance, it's propaganda. And so I just think that's the world in which we live in now, where this moral absolutism and identity politics nature you have to be defined by things that you don't choose. And sometimes those definitions can lead to death. And so I'm opposed to actual violence, not to words that make people sad.
I would not attend the open mic night at the Suicide Bomber Comedy Club. That is for sure.
Yeah.
That's not one I'd be signing up for.
They're only laughing about recounting what they've done, right?
Yeah.
Going through.
I'd definitely be nervous if there wasn't a metal detector at that one.
Clay, final 45 seconds or so each week, we try to get your top picks of the weekend. You like a lot of the home favorites this weekend in college football. Washington, Notre Dame, Tennessee.
I do. My favorite bet is the over in that Missouri-Kentucky game. I think both offenses will have success there. And so I'm all in on that. I think that I also think that Notre Dame in the under. I think Notre Dame will cover against USC. I hope you guys have had some fun talking about the way that they're trying to deal with rain by having the guy run around with the squirt gun basically at the USC campus, which I couldn't stop laughing at. Just the idea, like, hey, it's going to rain. Let's get a guy with a backpack full of water and just have him squirt the air around our punt returners. I think it's one of the all-time funny
They
clips.
should get Will Ferrell to do that.
Yeah, that would actually have been great. And I also love how that came to happen. Like, they were probably like, hey, have you seen the weather forecast? Like, we're in trouble. And somebody was like, you know what we should do? We should get a air, like a squirt gun, and that'll take care of it. So hopefully they don't have any fumbles.
Yeah, go find some super soakers to the intern.
Yeah,
have a safe flight, Clay.
Yeah, Clay, travel safe.
All right, will do.
There's Clay
See y'all.
Travis,
Bye.
OutKick founder. Coming up, headlines including plenty of trash talk after a blowout victory by the 49ers over the Dallas Cowboys.
I'm here at the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix, but that's not the only big race that's on people's minds. Let's go talk about it.
There's no way Biden can win again. There's just no way. Even the people that voted for him because they didn't like Trump now at least have to see, like, senile, not all there, probably won't be alive for 4 more years.
Are you a Trump guy? Or are you a DeSantis guy? Or someone else?
I don't like any of them.
Who's your dream candidate? Who would you want to run?
Myself. I think the best candidates probably are smart enough not to run.
I just hope there's somebody that's young enough to care about the country instead of their politics.
My fear is they get Gavin Newsom from California. And I think it would be the new cool vote for the younger people, and that's what I don't like.
Who do you think on the Republican side would be able to take on Gavin Newsom?
Great question. As a Republican registered, I love what Trump's body of work did, but they're just out to get him and destroy him, and we won't get things done, which is crappy for me to say. I thought DeSantis was going to be the guy. Trump only has 4 years left. He cannot fix everything that just happened in 4 years. And he's going to be battling indictments and all these false stuff for the next 4 years. We won't get anything done. And it'll just be the stalemate in America. That's why I almost don't want him in. But if he is the leading candidate, that's who I'm going to vote for.
Is there any Democrat that you would vote for, consider voting for?
Absolutely not.
What about RFK Jr.?
No.
Who should our first female president be?
Michelle Obama, of course. Okay. Yeah.
I'm going to go with Harambe 2024.
We have the 2024 presidential race coming up, and I wanted to see who you thought your favorite TV characters would vote for. Homer Simpson, like, who do you think he would vote for?
Donald Trump, all the way.
Vito Corleone.
Whoa. Whoever advances the cause of the Corleone family. Yeah.
Tony Soprano. If Tony Soprano is voting in the 2024 election, who do you think he's voting for?
I'm going to go Ron DeSantis.
Okay, why do you think that?
Just seems like a Ron DeSantis kind of guy.
Is this a meatball joke that you're trying to make right now? What about Homer Simpson?
Homer would vote for Biden because he's a dope.
Who do you think Napoleon Dynamite would vote for?
That's a good question. I actually don't know.
There's a right answer here.
He's voting for himself or Pedro.
There's a Viking show, I think.
Okay.
Maybe that's Hulu. I don't know.
So in the Viking show, whatever the main character is, who do you think they would vote for in 2024?
Probably a goat or a dog.
I think we have one of those in office right now. So who do you think Jon Snow would vote for in this upcoming election?
I'm going to say Donald J. Trump.
Why do you think so?
Because Game of Thrones is all about drama, and Trump comes with the drama, baby.
Would you vote for Trump from jail?
Yeah, probably. Because at that point, what else do you have to lose?
Okay, would you vote for Trump from a jail cell?
Yeah, baby, I will get Trump out of jail.
Would you vote for Trump in jail?
Oh, yeah.
Based as
The thing that Trump needs to remember is there's another political figure that said, I don't recall very well.
Yeah.
And that's all he's got to say.
Is there like a dream candidate, someone that you think could like save us all?
Yeah, Jesus.
Amen to that.
Sixth and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Glad you're with us. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow. Chad is back.
Back, baby.
Are you in the chat? Are you back in the chat?
Back in the chat.
Is it hopping?
Yeah. It's a little hit or miss.
All right.
Could be better.
Live chat right now. Search out OutKick on YouTube. Hope you'll subscribe while you're
Gotta
there.
get our fill while we can, Hutton. Life is short. Time is precious. Never know when things are going away. Like sand through the hourglass.
That's right.
You never know.
That's right.
Tomorrow's never promised, ladies and gentlemen. That's what I'm trying to tell everyone.
True words, Chad.
Yep. I'm a prophet.
Very
What
dark,
can I say?
Yeah, very dark and sinister outlook.
Very dark. Very sinister.
Sinister by George Kittle. I love this. Having the F the Cowboys T-shirt underneath his jersey on Sunday Night Football for that beatdown. He scores 3 touchdowns. Micah Parsons noticed it. And on his podcast, Parsons, by the way, I'm making headlines every week based on whatever he's saying on the edge. Responded to Kittle doing this, rubbing some salt in the wound, because Kittle posted it on his own Instagram page. George Kittle had 3 touchdowns on us. He posted this thing to Instagram. He said, "F Dallas." I just feel like he's making it way more personal than it had to be. Kittle's my guy, but I'm going to say this: laugh now, cry later. That from Micah Parsons. The thing is, the laugh now, cry later. San Francisco shows up every week. Dallas does not. And Dak Prescott says that all offseason they've been grinding on him, on his mind, been thinking about that loss to San Francisco now in 2 straight years for the divisional round of the playoffs. We've seen San Francisco knock them out after 2 straight 12-win seasons by the Cowboys. San Francisco's just straight better. They have playmakers that show up and produce week in and week out, and they have a quarterback that does the same thing, Chad. That's the real laugh now, cry later mentality. I mean, San Fran is laughing, and they'll be laughing again because we know the result. This is the result of Dak Prescott. That's why you're just so hesitant to buy into what Dallas is, which is a good team, a really good team that's not going very far.
Well, this is George Kittle's personality shining through. So I like that.
After a shining game.
Yeah, it would have been amazing had he posted that before the game. And then gone out there and done it.
But at least he's wearing the shirt under the jersey in order to show it off in the game.
Yeah, he's not going to show it off if they lose or in a losing effort, right? I mean, so, a little bit of good and bad there on not really calling a shot, but kind of calling a shot. And as someone who advocates for more hate in sports, and I'm talking about, genuine dislike amongst competitors, where there is animosity, and it's not all, come over here and let's exchange jerseys, and let's sign helmets, and let's sign receivers'
Everyone's
gloves.
Friends.
And then chat it up and all be smiling and laughing right after the game's over.
Immediately after.
I don't want that. I like this. I like Michael Parsons going on his podcast saying, laugh now, cry later. I like the idea that Michael Parsons wants to stick it to Kittle if they meet in the playoffs. Now, he should want to do that anyways. And Micah Parsons is a great player. I believe he will want to do that. But now that I know there's added motivation, Bring it on.
Well, and Parsons,
I love
it. With reporters in the locker room, he's saying, I don't really know if San Francisco's that much better than us. I think we're the same caliber playoff team, same talent, same standards as them. I just feel like we need to really consider some things to get together and fix some things. I feel like it was a few plays away, but that's true. I'm inserting my own thing there. I feel like it was a few plays away. The score really didn't shape up to what really happened out there. Deebo Samuel says it may be worse than 42-10 if they meet again down the road. I love this. And chances are they will.
Yeah,
San Francisco will be hosting Dallas.
Those 90s games between these two teams, bad blood. Every single time. I like this. Let's get a little back and forth going. George Kittle wants to wear an F Dallas shirt? Great. You want to show it off on social media? Awesome. Micah Parsons, who is sort of our modern-day Lawrence Taylor, the way he plays defense, if he wants to come back and say, laugh now, cry later, if I see you again, bring it on. Let's go. I love all this stuff. I wish more players got into it this way.
Says he's not going to put too much on it. You're going to make it personal. We can make it personal. That's cool.
I just don't want the fake. I don't want phony toughness. I don't think it is with these guys at all. But I don't like the fakeness of it or phony. This isn't that.
Well, because
I think this is legitimate.
No, I think Parsons is legit because he's on the same podcast weeks earlier, Chad. We've discussed this. He's taking up for Daniel Jones being in the game in the fourth quarter. He's commenting on
Zach Wilson.
You know, that goes back to everyone's friends and we're all happy family. But I don't think he takes this mentality week in, week out with everyone.
But that worried me a little bit when he kind of took this, Joe Namath and being too mean on our guy Zach Wilson and, or the Rodney Harrison with the question about you were out that day, I think, Hutton, but we got into it. And so many people were mad at Rodney Harrison. I'm asking the question, why? He's stating what everyone believes.
Yes.
And the way he asked it was, oh, come on. He's not – because it was player talk. They were talking. Someone said, no, he's a special quarterback. And he said, you're not watching that film and seeing a special quarterback. You're watching that film and your teammates thinking, this guy looks like trash. We're going to expose him in this game. And Chris Jones wouldn't go there with the answer, and people got mad at Rodney Harrison. I'm okay with that. And then everybody coming back, oh, he's not garbage. It was garbage, I think was the word.
Yeah.
Thinking he didn't say he was a garbage human being or that his life meant nothing. He's talking about the film, which, by the way, leading up to that game was garbage. That's all that he's saying. So Micah Parsons seems to be a little bit tougher now with his response now that he feels a personal attack from George Kittle for wearing that shirt. I love it. I want more of this.
Chad, the collapse of the Pac-12, well, TV rights and money. It's no secret that the Pac-12 received an offer from ESPN in 2022 for $30 million per season for the conference and to distribute to each team. And it sounds as though that the presidents and chancellors of the Pac-12, their demands for the new TV rights money that they wanted to come in was based on inaccurate data that was going to push them towards the middle of the money that was going to be received by the Big Ten and their new media rights contract that goes into effect starting next year with CBS and with Fox. And this goes on to mention in this new report that their demands were so lofty that it was more of like a laugh and chuckle and say, hey, don't let the door hit you on the way out. Go find that money elsewhere, and they couldn't do it.
Yeah, this from the story from Ian Miller at OutKick, and this is quoting a John Canzano report. It's no secret the Pac-12 received a $30 million offer from ESPN in 2022, which the conference rapidly turned down. Now, the problem was that the infamous $50 million counteroffer was based on some misunderstanding of what ESPN was paying directly to the Big Ten. Now, the story doesn't say exactly what ESPN's paying the Big Ten, but the Pac-12 thought it was between 70 and 80 million. So if you're following along here, a counter of 50 million actually seems like it's pretty within the range of what they should be asking for. They're not saying they're the Big Ten. They're saying they're $30 to $20 million less than the Big Ten annually. So they wanted to start there and then work their way down. But apparently because the numbers are wrong and that's not what ESPN was paying out to the Big Ten.
Well, keep in mind,
ESPN just walked.
Whenever Tony Petitti was brought in as the new commissioner of the Big Ten, one of the things that was mentioned that was immediately on his desk was getting the details, the open-ended details of the television contract worked out, T's crossed, I's dotted, because Kevin Warren, whenever he left, it was this $7 billion television contract, but there were a lot of loose ends to make it reach the $100 million mark. It was thought to be when Pettetti was hired and there were a lot of assumptions being made. It's closer, still above, but closer to what the SEC teams are receiving from ESPN moving forward.
So Utah President Taylor Randall is the one being quoted in this story. And Randall says, the Pac-12 presidents and chancellors work collectively in pursuit of a new media rights agreement. Though an offer was made by one of our media partners, we elected to take the rights to market to get the best deal. Throughout the process, many of the CEOs, including myself, pushed to ensure that the conference was aggressive to secure the best agreement we could. Several conference schools retained their own consultants to value the league, which resulted in a range of estimations. It is my understanding that any mention of $50 million, which was higher than any valuation, keep that in mind, higher than any valuation of any of the conference presidents that they received or the consultants, was only a potential starting point in negotiations to help get us to the estimated true value. Here would be my follow-up on all this. How was George Kliavkoff so bad at his job and had such a poor relationship with ESPN that he couldn't immediately go back to them and say, guys, we want to do business here with you. What you said 30, we said 50. Can we go back to 35, 38? I mean, the fact that ESPN walked because of that and did not want to do business with him is another damning piece of evidence about his leadership with the Pac-12.
Not only walked, ESPN walked, no other network or streaming service stepped up even anywhere close
nowhere near
to what that was. And it got to a point where it wasn't even the presidents and chancellors that were speaking. They were demanding more information.
Yeah.
This past offseason. Hey, we're still waiting on the numbers here. We're touting the fact that we're going to get a deal. We keep being told that by the conference commissioner. And there was a lot of secrecy and silence behind it. It went from overstepping and overplaying their hand to not even having one. And that, to me, Chad, the story is, okay, they asked for one thing with ESPN. They turned down $30 million in 2022. Okay. But they went from that to nothing. There wasn't another network that stepped up to take that on. And they, even at that time, you knew that USC and UCLA were headed to the Big Ten. So that was happening. And since then, we know Oregon and Washington are out, and we know there's a Pac-2 instead of a Pac-12. It's crazy how it all happened behind the scenes. And it doesn't sound like even the presidents or the chancellors knew all the details that were going on. It was a lot of massaging the numbers to make it look like everything was going to be on the up and up and everything was going to be fine, just fine.
Yeah, and David in the YouTube chat says ESPN wanted the Pac-12 to fold, period. Now, that may have been the case after they rejected the $30 million offer. The $50 million may have been inconsequential to what ESPN desired after the Pac-12 had the audacity to turn down the $30 million, because in hindsight, that looks like charity, because they weren't making that from anyone else when they looked at the valuation of the conference. So ESPN may have said, we've been great partners with you. We've made you very rich. We think this is more than your value.
Yeah.
Here's the offer. And then when they say, no, we're going to take it to market, they may have determined then we're not doing business with you. And at that point, yeah, ESPN has the juice to squeeze the life out of the Pac-12 in this whole process.
But in doing
they may have very much wanted the desire to be, you're no longer going to be a conference at this point.
And in doing that, though, keep this in mind. With the Pac-12 playing out the way it did, Chad, it also enhanced the value of the ACC to ESPN and ABC for programming. Who knows what the offer was like in 2022 for the $30 million. That doesn't necessarily mean Pac-12 after dark. That would have remained. But it's likely more ESPN Plus and streaming content. And there are a lot of channels and a lot of subscriptions that they need to serve as a company. So the ACC, I think, is bolstered by the fact that the Pac-12 overplayed this so much.
Well, and USC, UCLA leaving, ESPN is also thinking we're spending this much on Big Ten. They're over there now. We have them. Do we really want to keep spending money on all these leagues? And just made the business decision that they're done.
But at that time, though, they had the SEC coming in and the Big Ten departing, with the flip-flop.
Yeah.
So with the offer for the Pac-12, I just think it's more about they need assets for programming. They need
Yeah,
content, and by the Pac-12 going away, the ACC is protected in a way that the Pac-12 was not.
No, and I've misworded that. What I'm saying is they were offered that when they're making the offer. They had USC and UCLA,
yes,
and that was the value of it. Now they're saying, well, they're out the door now, so this isn't valuable.
Right.
We gave you more than a fair offer. You're going to come back with this BS $50 million. We're done here, and oh, by the way, you're now done. And they could have affected things that way. It's a sad deal. Overall, it's a sad deal because the Pac-12 was a good conference.
And they're great this year.
Yeah.
Great this year.
They're going out with a bang.
And who knows, the schedule towards the back half of the season, maybe they eat their own and they don't go out with a college football playoff team and representative. More headlines next. Plus, we discuss some of the best quarterbacks in the country out west.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation. And pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number one overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
There's no doubt in my mind he could have caught the ball in his back pocket if he'd been running. Blowing a lead and losing a game is 100 times more lasting and painful in some clubhouses than losing the game 15-0. If I had to start a list in the last 10 years of horrible underachievers, he's at the top.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only one or two. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Bold taste of a Southern legend.
Just like that, the final hour is here on this Wednesday edition. Hot Mic with Honey with Row across the OutKick Network. Glad you're with us, however you're consuming the show today, online, maybe on demand after the show airs, 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern, live each and every day. Coming up live with us in 20 minutes, Tom Glavine will join us. Chad, put that in perspective. Glavine on the show.
My childhood is very excited that Tom Glavine
right.
is coming on. One of my favorite, not just pitchers, not just baseball players, favorite athletes growing up. Tom Glavine, a cool customer. Can't wait to talk some baseball with him as we are 7 minutes away. Braves-Phillies, Game 3 coming up from Philly.
Coming up, college football rapid fire with some of the Heisman candidates, the favorites right now in Vegas, and we've got some head-to-head matchups in that across the college football slate. Right now, the top headlines of the day, Scorched Earth on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow. Tom Brady defending his former coach, Bill Belichick, based on what we're seeing in New England. Chad, I can't wait to get your comments on what we've seen the last 2 weeks with the Patriots and the Patriot way, which is the opposite way of what we're used to. But speaking on the Let's Go podcast, which posts every Tuesday, Brady said, I think results are different from what they've been, but I know he's got the same work ethic. He's got the same coaching style. I think the thing that I watch not only with the Patriots, but a lot of other things, football is a hard sport. When I'm sitting here watching from afar, I realize, God, there are a lot of variables. There are a lot of things that need to go right in order for a team to have success. I was a part of a lot of those teams. I don't take any of those things for granted. I needed a great defense, a great kicker, obviously needed great coach, needed great receivers, O-line. If I was going to be a successful player, I was going to need all of those things.
But here is the lesson in all of this. And, of course, Tom Brady takes the high road and says all this, and I would expect nothing less from Brady. And I believe he believes what he's saying about Bill Belichick. He has the same work ethic, check. Has the same coaching style, check. Does he have the same quarterback? Absolutely not. And all things funnel around the quarterback. Brady's right. You need a good offensive line. You need playmakers. You need a good defense. You need coaching. You need all these things. But what is of the utmost importance is quarterback. And the Patriots for 20 years had the best quarterback in the history of the game. And what this is all proving is that quarterback means a hell of a lot more than head coach. Maybe the exception is the 49ers. Just maybe. Maybe it doesn't matter as much there. And coach absolutely matters. And Bill Belichick is certainly a Hall of Famer and one of the best to ever do it. I'm not trying to say otherwise. But there's no discussion of it anymore. There's no debate to be had. It was Brady. It was Brady, then it was Belichick with all the success in New England. And we're seeing that right now. Tom Brady's words confirm that. Belichick hasn't changed. His work ethic hasn't changed. His coaching style hasn't changed. His eye for talent hasn't changed. His quarterback has changed. And they've missed on some attempts to bring in players also.
I think while things haven't changed, he also hasn't adapted, and they have missed in the draft. His eye for talent. As far as Mac Jones is concerned, no, he has not been good. But that dude has nothing around him. And the handling of the rookie quarterback, where he's in a Pro Bowl after year one, New England's in the postseason after year one of Mac Jones's career, to then go from that and Josh McDaniels, who takes the Raiders gig, to a situation where you have first-time play callers who are either on the defensive side of the football throughout their career or special teams coaches with Matt Patricia and Joe Judge, to then replace that with Bill O'Brien, now the third play caller in 3 years for Jones. And around him, where is the blue-chip talent? It's not there. The mantra, the Patriot way was, we're going to take good talent and they're going to perform at a great level for us. And yeah, they had the quarterback in Tom Brady. They also had defenses that were going to stop you dry. If you were trying to take the lead in the fourth quarter, defenses got the stop in New England. They got the football back for their quarterback. And I don't see that happening at a very large rate in New England right now. In fact, if you just think about the top 5 elite quarterbacks in the league. Maybe you can't even name 5 elite players. There's only a very small amount, Chad, of quarterbacks that could take on the New England roster and actually produce the winning results. Davey and I discussed yesterday. I'm tired of all the critics about the criticism on Brock Purdy, saying he's just the system guy. Because if you think it's just the system, I present Trey Lance. If it's the system, Trey Lance wouldn't be the NFL draft bust on the deep on the depth chart right now in Dallas. And I don't know, you don't drop Brock Purdy into New England, and he's not going to have success there either based on that roster. There's only 1, 2, maybe 3 quarterbacks in the league that could produce based on that and elevate the talent around them, because the talent there is, they're desperate for it. They don't have it. And it's bizarre how they've gone about things, to the point where you mentioned the coaching style. Belichick is known for forcing the Patriots, and they've done this for years. Pouring down rain. If it's snowing outside in December in the regular season, they're going to practice in the elements. They were doing that going into the game against Dallas in a dome on the road. Belichick had that team out in a pouring rainstorm, in a deluge, that week, going into a game that week where they're playing in a dome. That's weird. That's bizarre. And it's the Patriot way has worked, but the Patriot way is no longer the way to go. You have to adapt to whatever team you have in a certain locker room. And I don't think Belichick has done that. Not nearly to the amount, to the extent that would be assumed. And some of the decisions are just peculiar, especially going back to the coaches that were hired to coach Mac Jones.
Yeah, and let's go back to the Patriots of years past. Belichick, a common denominator. Brady was Brady and a huge leader, but you brought up defense. Teddy Bruschi, Mike Vrabel, Willie McGinnis, Gerard Mayo. We're spanning about 20 years of time with those names also.
Yes.
Did those guys put up with anything? Absolutely not. Did they challenge Tom Brady in the offense constantly? You bet you know what they did. That's a big difference also. It's a player-led situation.
You're right.
And Belichick was the perfect foil for all of that, and he had the perfect amount of organization and an eye for talent, all those things, and he was great. And it led to a dynasty. And
you went there to win. You didn't go there to have fun.
Yes.
You signed to win.
And I look at even the Chiefs of today. And Andy Reid is great. I love Andy Reid. I'm not taking anything away from Andy Reid, but Andy Reid can sort of be Andy Reid and let his guys draw up plays in the dirt the week of the game and allow them to run them, because he's got Mahomes and Kelsey and Chris Jones. He's got guys, leaders that he can count on, that he knows they're pros, and they're going to go out and get the job done. That's the big difference now in New England. I think Mac Jones is a punk. I don't think he's very good. I don't think his teammates really respect him. And I think you got a collection of guys that just aren't in with the Patriot way of years past, and that's why you have this team that's an abomination at this point.
Yeah, and it's so many.
At least for the last 2 weeks.
Well,
they've been gross to watch.
The first time we've seen Bill Belichick trail by 30 points at home in his head coaching career.
Non-competitive in consecutive weeks.
Yeah, well, and the combined score, 72-3. And getting boat raced by Dallas is one thing. 34-0 to New Orleans at home. The same New Orleans team, Chad, that could barely put up 16, 17 points against the Titans in week 1, and that has been desperate offensively. They've got a quarterback in Carr with a banged-up shoulder. 34-0 to score.
Bad.
And with Robert Kraft, who said, like, hey, we haven't won a playoff game since Brady's been here. And Mac Jones actually took them to one, believe it or not, and it wasn't pretty when they played was it Buffalo?
Yeah.
In that one game. But Kraft said that this offseason. And we've had Tom Curran on. We've heard from Mike Reese, two great reporters on that beat that say, yeah, the seat's warm. It's a quiet hot seat for Bill Belichick. And now the Athletic citing a source saying, not only could Belichick be out, but it's always been assumed he could just decide how he wants to go out. You know, you could make this easier with the exit where he chooses to leave. And in this report today, they're saying, well, Kraft may not give him that option. They may just fire him. That goes back to my offseason theory that this is more, you had the Belichick-Brady breakup, and Kraft tried to keep it together. They called that last-minute meeting, trying to get those guys to, kumbaya, and that wasn't going to happen. He leaves and goes to Tampa and wins a Super Bowl. Well, I think the breakup has happened from the top with Kraft And I think that's why Bill O'Brien's there, quite frankly. I don't necessarily believe that Belichick wanted to bring in O'Brien. And that was more of an ownership-led decision. And it's just weird for as consistent, Chad, as the Patriots have been at the very, very top, for them to be so inconsistent with some of the decisions that have been made at the top of the roster, which is at quarterback.
Hutton, you know what I think about when I think about that Mac Jones playoff game in Orchard Park in the freezing cold? Ryan Fitzpatrick shirtless in the crowd. That was the game where Ryan Fitzpatrick showed up cheering on the Bills, shirtless in the crowd. I do believe that was the game, if I'm remembering correctly. I remember that, and I remember Dawson Knox had a big game and a touchdown, and the Patriots were terrible. And that's more in line with what's happening right now, Patriots being terrible.
Not terrible. So the quarterbacks in college football, and Davey Hudson brings us the latest on the odds for the Heisman Trophy, and they're just straight quarterbacks, Davey.
Yes, that's right. We're going to do some college football, rapid fire, and I've got 6 Heisman candidates. These guys, their odds to win the Heisman plus 2,000 or better. And to start us off, we got several Pac-12 guys, as you might imagine, but Michael Penix Jr.
Chad's guy. That's how I describe it.
I'm going to let you go with this one, Hutton, because you guys know how I feel about him.
Impressive. And he has a large number of receivers to spread the ball around to, but he started the season debut. Was it Boise that they played?
Yep.
5 touchdown passes there.
Yep.
That was an upset alert type game because it was expected to be high scoring, except all the scoring came from one team. And the consistency week in and week out, Chad, is why Michael Penix Jr. is rightfully atop the list, according to OutKick.com/bet for the Heisman Trophy currently.
Such great accuracy and timing at all levels. I mean, the short passing game, the intermediate passing, and deep balls. I mean, that team will throw it all over you, all parts of the field, and it is Michael Penix Jr. that is the engine of that Huskies offense. I love him.
And
that was my pick before the season.
And they start fast.
I'm not changing right now, although there's still some really good names on this list.
Yes.
Speaking of Heisman, the recent Heisman winner, Caleb Williams, USC.
I just think the bar to win a second Heisman is so insanely high that in the modern era, I'm not talking about Archie Griffin back in the early 70s. In the modern era, it's impossible to reach. I don't know what Caleb Williams can do to win the Heisman. I just don't think it's going to happen. I mean, does he, come close to going 500 yards over last year's numbers and 10 touchdowns more? I just think if you do anything in the ballpark of a year ago, it's not going to win you a second Heisman. Voters are looking for someone different. They're looking for someone new, and that's going to cost Caleb Williams.
Looking for something different, and this is not a knock at Caleb Williams. He won last year's trophy by default because Hendon Hooker got hurt and C.J. Stroud didn't perform up to the level against Michigan when he should have, when the voters are actually tuned in to watch. So who do you vote for if you don't want to vote for a guy that wasn't good against Michigan on national TV? Here's Caleb Williams with Lincoln Riley. We're familiar with both. He got the votes. Again, no knock. Excellent quarterback. But it was going to be C.J. Stroud or Hendon Hooker, and it ended up not being due to injury and poor play on national TV.
I just want to say, if they can continue to win despite the defense playing bad, that is his best shot to repeat.
I agree, but here's the other thing, too. They've been putting up a ton of points, and he's been having sub-300-yard passing performances. They put up 56 or more twice this year when he's had less than 300 yards passing. They're extremely talented. There are ways, and I'm an example just now. There are ways that the voters will find a way to pass the vote somewhere else because they've just voted for this guy a year ago. And they'll count the defense against them as much as they should not, and as much as they should be paying attention to the top players across the country. I just don't think the majority of voters do that.
Well, to Davey's point, and I talked about an impossibly high bar to go over to win a second Heisman, part of that bar would be undefeated.
Well,
I'm with you there. That puts you in the running to win a second Heisman. His team has to be undefeated. And we know that's not going to be his fault if they're not. It's going to be the defense's fault. But regardless, I think that has to be one of the factors that puts him into consideration and gives him a chance at winning a second trophy.
And here's the other thing, too. What does he do when the voters are watching? When the average one of the 900 voters, they'll be watching this weekend. How many games did they actually see that dude play a year ago when they gave him the trophy? That's a question I would pose to them. Not many. And they watched when it mattered. This week matters. They've got November 4th, USC does, against Washington, against the current leader in the odds, and Michael Penix Jr. That will matter. And they also have the gauntlet of the Pac-12 schedule with all the transfer quarterbacks coming up.
I saw the 2 Utah losses, but on to our next one.
That's true.
Bo Nix, Oregon, our final Pac-12 quarterback on this list.
I don't know how this happens, Chad. I don't know how this happens going from one program where he's a generational player for them. He's a legacy, a third generation legacy player, goes to Oregon and is putting up the type of numbers to where Mike Renner's in studio with us saying completely different player. Looks totally different than what we saw at Auburn.
It's coaching. It's just getting more comfortable. I think it's also Bo Nix just improving as he goes along and becoming more and more comfortable with being a college quarterback, seeing things better. But for him to win the Heisman, we're talking about his chances of winning it. It starts Saturday.
Yes.
Right? Ball out and win in a shootout against Michael Penix Jr. To me, that gets it started.
It gets it started towards the comparison of Joe Burrow.
And you have to win the game.
Towards the comparison of Joe Burrow, where he leaves, goes to LSU, wins it. It would be a similar storyline because Oregon would be on that path out of the Pac-12 after beating who we believe to be the top team in the Pac-12. One of the top players in baseball, Hall of Famer Tom Glavine, joins us next on Hot Mic.
I'm here at the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix, but that's not the only big race that's on people's minds. Let's go talk about it.
There's no way Biden can win again. There's just no way. Even the people that voted for him because they didn't like Trump, now at least have to see senile, not all there. Probably won't be alive for 4 more years.
Are you a Trump guy? Or are you a DeSantis guy? Or someone else?
I don't like any of them.
Who's your dream candidate? Who would you want to run?
Myself. I think the best candidates probably are smart enough not to run.
I just hope there's somebody that's young enough to care about the country instead of their politics.
My fear is they get Gavin Newsom from California. I think it would be the new cool vote for the younger people, and that's what I don't like.
Who do you think on the Republican side would be able to take on Gavin Newsom?
Great question. As a Republican registered, I love what Trump's body of work did, but they're just out to get him and destroy him, and we won't get things done, which is crappy for me to say. I thought DeSantis was going to be the guy. Trump only has 4 years left. He cannot fix everything that just happened in 4 years. And he's going to be battling indictments and all these false stuff for the next 4 years. We won't get anything done. And it'll just be the stalemate in America. That's why I almost don't want him in. But if he is the leading candidate, that's who I'm going to vote for.
Is there any Democrat that you would vote for, consider voting for?
Absolutely not.
What about RFK Jr.?
No.
Who should our first female president be?
Michelle Obama, of course. Okay. Yeah.
I'm going to go with Harambe 2024.
We have the 2024 presidential race coming up, and I wanted to see who you thought your favorite TV characters would vote for. Homer Simpson, who do you think he would vote for?
Donald Trump, all the way.
Vito Corleone.
Whoa. Whoever advances the cause of the Corleone family. Yeah.
Tony Soprano. If Tony Soprano is voting in the 2024 election, who do you think he's voting for?
I'm going to go Ron DeSantis.
Okay. Why do you think that?
Just seems like a Ron DeSantis kind of guy.
Is this a meatball joke that you're trying to make right now? What about Homer Simpson?
Homer would vote for Biden because he's a dope.
Who do you think Napoleon Dynamite would vote for?
That's a good question. I actually don't know.
There's a right answer here.
He's voting for himself or Pedro.
There's a Viking show, I think.
Okay.
Maybe that's Hulu. I don't know.
So in the Viking show, whatever the main character is, who do you think they would vote for in 2024?
Probably a goat or a dog.
I think we have one of those in office right now. So who do you think Jon Snow would vote for in this upcoming election?
I'm going to say Donald J. Trump.
Why do you think so?
Because Game of Thrones is all about about drama, and Trump comes with the drama, baby.
Would you vote for Trump from jail?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, probably. Because at that point, what else do you have to lose?
Okay, would you vote for Trump from a jail cell?
Yeah, baby, I will get Trump out of jail.
Would you vote for Trump in jail?
Oh, yeah.
Based as
The thing that Trump needs to remember is there's another political figure that said, I don't recall very well. Yeah. And that's all he's got to say.
Is there like a dream candidate, someone that you think could like save us all?
Yeah, Jesus.
Amen to that.
Glad you're with us for Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow here across the OutKick network. Game 3 underway between the Braves and Phillies. No score, bottom 1 in Philadelphia. Chad, we've long mentioned Tom Glavine as one of our favorites. Described just as you hear the name, you think of your childhood. We're not trying to date him or make him feel old.
Well,
but
we should say our childhood.
our childhood, yeah.
Not everyone's
Oh,
childhood.
no doubt.
Certainly
no doubt.
not. I don't think when Tom was growing up, he thought Tom Glavine
No,
in his childhood.
no.
He was watching someone else. But we think Tom Glavine.
Tom Glavine joins us, the Hall of Famer, here on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow. Great to have you on. Thank you for the time.
My pleasure. I apologize. My headphones don't seem to be wanting to hook up, but we'll make the most of this. But
Hey.
happy to be with you guys.
You sound great. Tom, when you hear us say that you remind us of our childhood, who's the player that when you think of your childhood growing up that reminds you of watching the game?
Well, the first guy that comes to mind would be a different game, Bobby Orr.
Yeah.
Second guy would probably be, man, it's kind of that era. Fred Lynn, Jim Rice, Carlton Fisk, kind of that era. I was a little too. I remember Yaz, but I was a little too young, I think, to be a huge Yaz fan.
Tom, we were mentioning earlier in the show, we believe the winner of Game 3 wins this series. Do you agree?
I would not bet against the winner of Game 3. Yeah, I think it'd be tough for either team to win to try to win 2 in a row. The way both pitching team or both staffs pitching is lined up for the last 2 games.
Does it feel like 5 games is not enough to decide the NLDS or ALDS after the 162 games? This feels like too short a series, especially for these 2 teams.
In this scenario, probably is, but I think that's part of what makes all the chaos fun, right? I'm a big fan of the extra round, so in order to have the extra round, you're going to have to shorten these rounds. That's kind of the price you pay. But having said that, as you guys know, as I've experienced, over 162 games, the best team usually wins, or I should say always wins. In a short series, it's not always the best team. It's just the team that is performing the best at that time. So that's what makes it scary in those series. You get behind the 8 ball a little bit, and you don't have time to recover.
I want to ask you, Tom, about both adrenaline and nerves and the flip side of that. And I've heard this throughout the playoffs. Watching Max Fried the other night, first inning, he throws a 98-mile-per-hour fastball. And I think it may have been Jeff Francoeur on the call who said, boy, this is he's pumped up. This is adrenaline in the first inning. What would your advice be to a pitcher that's experiencing postseason adrenaline? Is it to harness or is it to let it ride?
Well, I mean, it's a combination. I think if you can, you in order to let it ride, you got to learn how to harness it, right? I mean, I think most guys will tell you, myself included, when you feel too strong and you're throwing a little bit harder than you're kind of used to, your command usually suffers, and you generally don't pitch as well as a result. So, I would never necessarily tell a guy, "Hey, back off," but I think there's a difference between, "Hey, back off," in terms of don't throw the ball so hard, and back off in terms of effort, right? I mean, I think when you get into those situations, your feeling is that you're just letting it ride every pitch. You're letting it go as hard as you can. the whole max effort thing. And I'm not saying that, there's necessarily anything wrong with that at times, but it's tough to pitch at max effort all the time. So, I think my thing would be, all right, you can throw 98 when you want to, but let's dial it back maybe and throw 96, see if we can't throw the ball where we want to and kind of harness that energy a little bit, and save the 100% for every once in a while when you need it, if that makes sense.
Tom Glavine with us. How do you survive a game with just one pitch working?
Not easily, I can tell you that. It's difficult, right? I mean, assuming you have that one pitch that's working and is dialed in and is on command, then you have to be smart about how you use your other pitches to try to set that pitch up or to keep people off that pitch, right? I mean, as a hitter, if you can eliminate pitches or eliminate locations, you're narrowing a guy down and you're making your job as a hitter easier. So, particularly if you can eliminate pitches. Now, I know for me, if there was a pitch that I was struggling with on a given day, you don't abandon it. You just pick spots where you can use it, that if you miss, it doesn't hurt you. Or you make sure that if you do miss, you miss in the right spot. Don't miss over the plate, miss down or miss up or out of the zone, but you're still bringing that pitch along because, it happened to me a lot of times where I might not have a pitch in the first or second inning, but I keep using it. And then the third inning, it's like, oh, there it is. Okay, here we go. And now you've got it. So you can't abandon it.
You hear so much about crowd noise in football affecting the opposing quarterback, getting the playoff, false starts, things like this. I've heard so much about Philly being the loudest place in baseball right now. It was a year ago, and early on it seems to be that way again here in Game 3. You've pitched in some crazy environments in the postseason. How does that affect the starting pitcher when a place is truly loud?
Well, look, I mean, we all feed off the crowd, right? Good and bad. When you're at home and the crowd's loud, they're generally on your side. Things are going well. You feed off that momentum. When you're on the road and they're loud, they're trying to either get you rattled or there are things going on that they're excited about. So, in either case, it's not generally a great scenario for you being on the mound, but you have to do your best to A, drown it out, but B, silence it, right? I mean, that's the goal of going out there as an opposing pitcher on the road, is you want to keep that crowd as quiet as you can. So, that's where experience comes into play. People talk all the time about experience versus talent in the postseason. Look, I'd love to have a combination of both, but I just think the experience factor makes it easier for guys to deal with all of that stuff and then ultimately focus on what the job is at hand and then trusting themselves to do that job. Trust is a big thing. And when you don't have it, particularly on the road, it's hard to execute.
Tom Glavine, our guest, Hot Mike with Hunt and Withrow across the OutKick Network. How do you explain, Tom, Kershaw in the postseason versus regular season?
I don't. It's just one of those things, right? I mean, look, he's a Hall of Fame pitcher. For whatever reason, it's been a struggle for him in the postseason. And obviously if he knew what was going on, he'd have figured it out, right? Something. I mean, that's the thing. So obviously, I think for him, it's just one of those things where he's trying to figure it out, trying to get better, probably trying not to think about it, but inevitably, he seems to have that one outing in the postseason every year that doesn't go so well. But I don't know. It's just some guys, and I'm not saying he's nervous or he's any of that stuff, right? I just think that for whatever reason, some guys struggle postseason, some guys feed on postseason, and unfortunately for him, he's one of those guys that struggled a little bit.
You have one of the more celebrated postseason pitching performances in the history of the game. Game 6, 95 World Series, 1-0 win, combined one hitter in that game. There were a lot of things going on around that game. I know that morning with a quote that was put in print from David Justice, who did redeem himself in that game with the home run, about Atlanta fans. But when you wake up on a day of a game like that, are you thinking at all about long-term ramifications? Do you think about legacy and what this would mean and all that? Do you even allow that to creep in your brain before a performance like that?
I mean, I think I did to some extent, right? Because truth be told, I was not happy that I had to pitch that game. We had an opportunity to win Game 5 in Cleveland and put the series away, and we didn't, and it was frustrating, right? I think anytime you're on this team like that, you want to put a series away. You don't want a team to get any kind of life or any kind of notion. So, we were all disappointed that we didn't win and end the series there. And it really wasn't until we landed in Atlanta that I really started to embrace the opportunity side of it, the legacy side of it, right? And that's what I thought about is like, hey, you got an opportunity to do something for this team, for this city that we've been chasing for a while. You get the chance to go out there and be the guy to do that. So, that at that point in time, I embraced it. I guess as far as game day went, I would almost say you go the other way sometimes and trick yourself into thinking, you know what, this is not that big a deal. Yes, it's a big game. Yes, it's, people are going to be rooting 10 days from now. Nobody's going to think about it. Nobody's going to care, so you almost try to trick yourself the other way day of the game. But I think for me, like I said, it was just the opportunity and then ultimately going out there and trying to cash in on it.
Meanwhile, 28 years later, someone like me, I still care. So certainly didn't go away 10 days later. Did you guys discuss at all the David Justice stuff where he was comparing Braves fans to previous years, saying the stadium wasn't as loud? Did you joke with him about it and say, hey, maybe go out and do something big tonight? Was that a distraction at all?
No, I mean, I wouldn't say it wasn't a distraction because we had to talk about it a little bit, right? And at that stage of the game, all you want to talk about is the game and what's going on. You don't want to talk about stuff like that periphery stuff that's kind of the noise and the distraction. You don't want to talk about that. So, it was a little bit of a distraction, but I think it was taken a little bit out of context, right? I think that, look, there was obviously, I don't know that anything would have equaled what went on in that city in 1991. I mean, we came out of nowhere. The city was on fire. It was electric. Everybody was behind us. And now here we are 4 tries later. The fans were still excited and into it, but it was probably a little bit different. So I think we understood what David was trying to say, but ultimately what he was trying to do, he was trying to fire the fans up. He wanted us to have a distinct home field advantage, and that's where he was trying to go. I just think it was a little bit misconstrued, and probably brought a little bit more attention to it than there needed to be. But thankfully, like you said, he,
came through.
Talk softly and carry a big stick, right?
Yep.
Speaking of big sticks, segue here, Tom Glavine, our guest. Have you thought about he mentioned legacy. Chad mentioned legacy to you. Have you thought about if we had the permanent DH rule in place in the 90s, would Chicks Dig the Long Ball commercial, would that actually have been shot for Nike with you and Maddox?
No, probably not. My trophy case would be much lighter because I wouldn't have 4 Silver Slugger awards.
Nope.
So, no. Listen, I'm leading up to it. I was not a fan. I'm still ultimately probably not a fan, but I did come down on the side of I got so tired of watching how bad the pitcher's hitting was that it almost disgraced me into being on board with the DH. So. I don't love it. Like when I played and we played an American League team and we had a DH, I felt like I was missing a portion of the game. I always felt like when I was in the lineup offensively, I was an advantage for my team over the guy that I was facing. Now that wasn't always the case, obviously, but most of the time I felt like it was. So those are all little things that you look forward to, you look at. The purist in me misses it, but I get it. I get why they had to do it.
So, this may be my biggest old man complaint, and this was towards the very end of pitchers still batting during games before the permanent DH. The lack of bunting ability in Major League Baseball in the end. And I remember distinctly watching Braves teams where the pitcher could not lay down a bunt and get it on the ground. Drove me insane watching it. Was that a point of irritation for you as you watched the game years after you were done playing?
1,000%, because to me, there's no excuse for that, right? I mean, I know, look, most of our guys on our rotations were all pretty good hitters, right? And for pitchers, we weren't automatic outs. We were going to make the guy at least make some pitches, right? We weren't going to stand up there, take 3 pitches, and go sit down. We were going to make them work a little bit and would mix in some hits. But ultimately, we could all bunt, and I know how I felt about it. I would venture to say the other guys felt the same way, but it's like I always said, I'm gonna give Bobby enough reasons to take me out of the game because of my pitching. I'm damn sure not going to let him take me out of a game because I can't lay down a bunt, right? There's just no excuse for that. And when you look at it over time, I don't know how many more wins I got because I stayed in the game in the 6th or 7th inning so I could bunt, and then your team scores a run an inning later and you get the benefit of that win. That was a lost art. But I'll say this in defense for these guys today. My generation, we all grew up playing multiple sports. We all grew up playing baseball. And when we weren't pitching, we were hitting third or fourth in our lineups in high school, right? These guys nowadays, they never pick up a bat. They're pitcher only on most of their teams. So to think that they're going to spend their childhood never picking up a bat and then they're going to learn how to hit in the big leagues, good luck with that. And clearly it didn't work out so well.
Knew you'd have a great answer to that one. You did not disappoint. How much fun was the Players Only broadcast? And the response to it was terrific with you guys in the booth. And I know you came back and did it again, but did it live up to your expectations?
I think it did based on the reaction, and I think it did for us too. I know we had a ton of fun, right? I think the big thing going into that, at least for me and Frank Core, was we were trying not to get fired, right? Because God knows your mouth. And I'll be honest with you, when I get around those guys and it's that kind of locker room mentality, it's really hard for an F-bomb or something not to come out. It just is. So I think that was all of our biggest fears is when we got on TV that's, not Smolty because he never says anything bad. But, something might come out. And I think that was our biggest fear. But then I think, when they brought that to us, the Bally's whole idea, so to speak, was you guys are at a bar watching a game, talking about it, and everybody at home is at the bar with you. That's what we want to see. And I feel like we did that the first go around, no question about it. Now, I had a lot of people, oh, you guys should do that all the time. I'm not sure people would want to watch a broadcast like that all the time because, truth be told, that first game we barely talked about what was going on in the field. We did no play-by-play. We did very little until later in the game, reminding people what the score even was or what inning we were in. But that was fun for the first one because we had Smolty came armed with a lot of stuff and information and things for us to rag on each other about. So it was fun, and I think we accomplished what we were trying to do. And then I think the second one, look, the first one we couldn't have had a better game, right? You got Braves, Mets, you got Verlander, Strider. This is going to be a pitcher's duel. And by the fifth inning, there were 30 hits and all kinds of runs, and so it was nothing like we had planned, and then you have a walk-off to win it. So, it couldn't have been any better, and I think that was our concern the second go-round is how do you do it better? The game was so good. How do you do it better? And I think we just tried to introduce a little bit more play-by-play, a little bit more of a traditional broadcast, and then mix in the story. So, I think people enjoyed it. I'm just not sure, like I said, how much of it people would really want to see.
Really enjoyed it, is how we would describe it. Yeah, it was great. Yeah, always great to have the chance to catch up with the players that meant a lot to us growing up. Tom Glavine, certainly one of those. Tom, great visit. Still no score, bottom second now between Braves and Phillies.
All right, well, we'll see what happens. It's a big game.
We got it, man. Thank you. Let's do this again soon.
Thank you so much.
All right, you guys have a great day.
Same to you. There's Tom Glavine.
I knew he'd be mad about bunting.
Yeah,
pitcher's not been able to do it. I
Crushed
knew
it on the answer, too. You're right. Coming up, we'll wrap up the show. We'll look ahead to Chad's weekend begins tomorrow. Got some big football matchups. We'll keep you updated on the scores, other headlines as well. Coming up on Hot Mic with Hutton Withrow across the OutKick Network.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. The bold taste of a Southern legend.
Oh, thanks to Tom Glavine for joining us. Chad, still no score?
No score going to the top of the third.
Brett's had 2 hits in the first, no runs.
Yeah, Aaron Nola really good in the second inning. Bryce Elder so far good throughout. Struck out Bryce Harper in the first inning, and I think just ended the second inning with a strikeout also. How great was Tom Glavine?
Always legit.
So true, too. He was a stud hockey player growing up and had a chance to go play in the NHL, but ended up being a Hall of Fame pitcher. But about, guys growing up is, hey, we were the third or fourth batter on all of our teams also because we were the best players. Now guys specialize so early. If they're a pitcher, that a lot of them, they stop hitting. If there's a DH rule in their travel ball system or league or whatever it may be. Love talking baseball with Tom Glavine. That was awesome.
Chad, Chad's back, by the way. First day this week. Great to have you back with Roe. I haven't been able to get reaction on some of the bigger headlines that we hit on Monday.
Yeah. Oh, let's get into it.
Mario Cristobal.
Oh, my goodness.
I said this should be a call that bad or a gaffe that bad where in high school, in middle school, you've got kids that would know what the victory formation signal looks like from the sideline, right?
Yeah.
And to not knee on the ball based on the clock management and knowing that you've got the game won because Georgia Tech's out of timeouts, that should be an offense that is fireable with cause in a contract. If you're doing something that egregious, making that type of money in that moment, and after the fact, he's owned it. How else could you? You can't approach it any other way. But he's done it before in his coaching tenure. He did it against Stanford, and he did it again this past weekend.
I could not believe it. I mean, hell, some of the Miami players couldn't believe it. There's that video of the guy on the sideline in tears saying, "What the bleep are we doing?" After this happened,
and he's saying, hey, we got to pick up and move forward. That's what he said this week.
I don't know how
I don't know how the players do that based on the reaction we saw.
Based on the reaction, and I mean, look, typically athletes can be resilient. So next week may be totally different, but they're undefeated, and they lose to a terrible Georgia Tech team with no offense, and to lose in that fashion, knowing you are a victory formation away from ending the game. And then post-game, he did own it, but he also said, well, we talked about 2 hands on the ball, and no. And also you put the kid in a terrible spot because that's on him. I mean, he's the one who fumbled it. He didn't have to fumble the ball. He could have held on to it, and he gets tackled, and the game's over also, right? He didn't need to be in that spot.
Oh, and then after
the game has been played.
After that, Chad, make 1 tackle, and the game's over,
You've
too.
gone 59 and a half minutes. The game is over.
You coach and train and practice for that moment.
You call victory formation.
Yes.
You take the snap. You take a knee. Game over. And instead, that happens. I'm with you. I'm not one to overreact and say they should fire that coach before he goes to the locker room after something like that. Fans say that all the time. That's the one moment where I really thought to myself, if I were a Miami fan, I would stand up, turn my TV off, and hope that they fired the guy before he got to the locker room because of a mistake like that. That is,
and that's his
in sports and coaching, as close to unforgivable a decision that you will ever witness. That was truly awful.
Because you had that happen to you in the past. Like it's not like
and you got to have someone that's telling him.
Yes.
Like, I don't understand. That's a whole coaching staff. Yeah, he's the head coach.
Well, he's saying he should have stepped in
and said the offensive
and he
coordinator.
And you should have.
Of course. But that is the head coach's job. Guys, all the time. Guys, let's run it here. Guys, we like this alignment. Let's throw it here. Let's take a knee. Look at the clock. If it's true what he's saying and the offensive coordinator's not paying attention to the clock, he's just run. Hey, we're working clock.
Man,
come on.
But that can't happen given the circumstance of his past. That's what I'm saying. And that's his dream gig, leaving Oregon, going to Miami, having played there. He's got sorry, man, you just don't overcome something like that.
Truly terrible.
You don't. That hangs over you.
If he loses his job in Miami for poor performance, mark that moment down. That is going to be stuck on our brains forever. And we will always go back to that moment. I really think it is like BC and AD. For him and in Miami tenure. I think it's before that and after that. I mean, look, it's one loss. They can turn it around. They may go undefeated and win the national title next year. But I am mentally marking that moment down as before the gaffe and after that gaffe. That was awful.
Well, and it's more than just going unbeaten. It's what we see right now on the landscape of the ACC, where you've got the unbeatens, and now you have Miami as one of the losses with a one loss, and then the round robin where they're not going to play each other, right? Like Florida State and Louisville, we're not going to see that matchup, for instance. Miami should be in that conversation, and now they have the loss to Georgia Tech because of the coach.
Yeah, David says in the YouTube chat also, he didn't initially own it. He first started talking about ball security. The clip that I saw there by his playing was he started the answer by saying, we talked about two hands on the football, which we'll go back and talk about. But what you said, Hutton, essentially, I need to get on the mic and say, we need to take a knee here. That's what needs to happen.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Chad, two other things. Chad prop segment here. Number one, last week you expected Georgia to really show the most complete performance. Everything was going to come together against Kentucky. And LSU, Missouri, I know you didn't expect Kentucky or Missouri to win.
I expected the over, though, to hit, which it
did.
did.
Yeah, and I'm saying that from Missouri's – I do think, though, and I'm going to hit on Georgia and Kentucky in a moment. Missouri, though, will present problems despite this loss to Tennessee and Georgia. Watch out for this because they are still spinning it with Cook. And
Luther Burden is a legitimate difference maker for any team in America.
Yes.
He's that good.
If you get an off day against Missouri, you're probably
Missouri's
a
problem for everyone they play. I am convinced of that now. Now, I don't, they're not an SEC East champion type team.
No.
But they're going to present problems I'm a little surprised that Kentucky's favored in this game against Missouri. That may be one to watch later in the week when we go through this. If you listen to nothing else that I say every week, the only thing worth listening to that comes out of my mouth when it comes to predicting what's going to happen. Again, great at reacting to things, terrible at predicting things. When I give a pitch to Kelly in Vegas on Fridays, I think I'm 4-0 in that pitch. Now, she never takes my suggestion on this, but I told you on Friday that Georgia would cover the 14.5 with ease. They won by 38 in this game. This is an annual rite of autumn. Every year, Kentucky jumps out to a 5-0, 4-0, something along those lines, start to the season, and everyone gets super pumped about Kentucky football and all that Mark Stoops has done. Then the schedule gets difficult, and they go 7-5. And that's not terrible at Kentucky. I'm not saying that it is, but that's what's going to happen with this Kentucky team. We see it almost every single year. And now you got Mark Stoops on his coach's show going after a fan saying, well, pony up some money if you want us to compete with Georgia. Not the best thing to say. Now, I know he walked it back today and came back and said, we had one guy who was frustrated, and he said something about we can't get over this hill, which is beating Georgia. And his response was, well, that's Mount Everest. He said, I've gotten over plenty of hills, but beating that team is Mount Everest is what I should have said and not gone down that road. By the way, awfully quiet compared to when Nick Saban said it about Jimbo Fisher, about paying for players, right? We're not getting the same response from Kirby Smart that we got from Jimbo when Nick Saban insinuated that was going on.
Yeah.
Anyway, Kentucky is...
Timing is everything, though.
Kentucky's a good team, not great. Georgia is probably great, and they're coming into their greatness again.
See,
bad news for the rest of the country.
Great, I don't know. But what I do know is
their roster's great.
Their roster's great.
So I mean, if they put it together, they're gonna be in the playoff again.
The mesh between the new coordinator, taking some time here. If they're really hitting their stride, Chad, this is not going to be much of a college football playoff if they're just now beginning to become great. Because there's not that one great team this year, and if Georgia is. This is not going to be that competitive down the stretch of the season or once we get to January 1st and the college football playoff.
If you put just statistics side by side, the two best quarterbacks, the most prolific passers in the SEC right now, Jaden Daniels 1, Carson Beck 2.
And Beck continues to get heat. I don't know how.
He was great in that game.
11 touchdowns, 3 interceptions over the last 6 games.
74% of his throws, too, this season.
Good teams improve. Great teams improve to elite status. Is Georgia right there?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I know the sentiment is, well, all of a sudden it's October the 11th and it's Bama and Georgia headed towards. I think Bama loses again. I don't think Bama's winning out now all of a sudden.
I think that's a possibility. I think LSU could get them. LSU's got the offense to score. I don't know if they can stop Alabama or anyone defensively based on the way they're playing defense right now. I think Tennessee could beat them from just player-to-player standpoint, right? I don't know that I'm not going to predict that.
Milroe's been fine, though.
But it could happen.
Milroe's been fine the last 2 weeks since he was benched.
It's amazing how everything is settled from, Georgia's really kind of stubbing their toe, but find a way to win. Saban's retired. They lose by 10 to 2. Oh, what are we, 3 weeks from the Texas game?
Yes.
2 weeks from Auburn almost upsetting Georgia.
Yep.
And 2 weeks later, we're sitting here saying, well, go ahead and book your tickets for Atlanta. Georgia and Alabama once again playing for the SEC title.
Meanwhile, Ole Miss, they're not getting enough credit because they lost to Bama, and that was a game that for the taking for them based on the situation of that week. But it's the first 2-1 start in conference play for Lane Kiffin, and I mean they've got a loss to Bama, a loss to Georgia coming up.
Yeah.
They have a 9 or 10 win season in a schedule that's the exact opposite of last year.
Yeah.
Last year, it's set up perfectly for them to be 5 or 6 wins.
I think they were
midway
7-0, I want to say, last year before they hit the tough part of their schedule.
And now it's much more difficult, Chad, but I like the way they've played since that loss.
Yeah. No, they feel so much they're balanced. They've got the great rushing attack with Quinshon Judkins and I'm blanking on his name, but the Ulysses Bennett, the transfer from SMU, who's also a terrific running back. They've got a great backfield. Their defense is pretty good. I like that Ole Miss team. I really like LSU's offense. I think playmaker-wise, they're so explosive and difficult to stop. Going back to Missouri LSU, I think that Brady Cook is such a sneaky, great quarterback. I know he threw the pick. He had the longest streak in the SEC of passes without an interception going into this week. But it's his ability to run, too. Like, he's really better than you would expect him to be in both sides of his game. He's a better runner than you would expect, and he's sneaky that way.
And they're up by 12 at one point.
And he can drop it in a bucket.
He threw for 411.
Yeah.
And now it's LSU's defense. He threw for 411, and 150 of that went to Burton.
I like it. I like Missouri, and I still think Kentucky is going to be okay. Tennessee, I still don't know about. Vanderbilt's miserable. Florida, I think, is probably going to end up being pretty miserable also as the year goes on. It's going to be fun.
They're at South Carolina this week, right?
South Carolina, this is a big opportunity for them. This is one they need to get based on expectations this year. This is one you can't drop. This feels like when Tennessee hosted South Carolina a couple weeks ago, where you're saying, oh, boy, Tennessee loses this game at home, the bottom might fall out of their season quickly. That's what this game feels like to me for South Carolina on the reverse side of that. They need to beat Florida.
It is Denver at Kansas City for Thursday Night Football. We'll preview that game coming up tomorrow here on Hot Mic. Chad, Will Ferrell, the old fraternity here, and the DJ aspect.
This was his fraternity they returned to.
This is awesome. He shows up and he's done some things on stage with his son, I believe, who's in a band, and he's played the cowbell before. But randomly showing up as the DJ and then the crowd behind him, too, is awesome.
Yeah, and it just totally in character.
Yes.
Completely, just he is the DJ. There's no breaking. This is like a great SNL sketch where there is, he's not the one breaking and laughing during the cowbell sketch. It's Jimmy Fallon and everyone else around him. The kids around him are loving it, but he is completely serious that he is the DJ.
You made the point, too, like the one kid behind him who puts the arm around him.
Kid's like touching his shoulder and his arm, and I'm like, man, pretty bold of you just to go start grabbing Will Ferrell, who's in front of you. And he doesn't even break stride, doesn't acknowledge it, just continues, playing the ones and twos. However you do that. We'll have to ask Colin. He seems like he knows DJing.
That's right.
Better than the rest of us. However you DJ, that's how he was DJing.
Chad, great to have you back.
It's good to be back.
We'll be back tomorrow.
Braves are on the board.
Eastern. Good. We'll recap that. Look ahead to the weekend as well, which officially kicks off tomorrow. Join us, Hot Mic Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick Network.